Big day.
That'll be the headline tomorrow, but I won't be here, so this one said today. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up. The declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Jeremy Hunt delivering a defiant spring budget as he faces criticism from both Labour and Conservatives over proposals that will see 6 million people pay higher taxes.
It comes amid better-than-expected Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts that predict that inflation will plummet to under 3% by the end of the year, and the UK will avoid recession in 2023.
Credit Suisse announced it will take a $50 billion loan from the Swiss Central Bank after its share price plummeted. The drop wiped billions from the stock market, prompting the Bank of England to hold emergency talks to assess the risk to the economy.
The Queen Consort has met with a young ballet dancer who's set to be the subject of a Disney documentary on a visit to Elmhurst Ballet School. Anthony Madu was offered a scholarship after a video of him dancing in the rain in Nigeria went viral.
And we're going to introduce you to the woman who put herself up for adoption at the age of 43. She'll tell you her story, which is now the inspiration behind a new film, Adopting Audrey. I'd like to be adopted.
Yeah, no,
I'm an orphan. I am an orphan now.
Sorry.
I have no mother or father.
That's not laughable, sorry.
But it's true.
No, I know, that is a difficult stage in life. I don't know what to say to that. But yeah, I think you might struggle to find someone to adopt you.
Do you think so? Do you think so? The phone will be ringing off the hook today.
Well, it has to be like, you know...
I would be like an old dog, like a Labrador, that you would go along to
you
the
do like grand
rescue centre.
Sunly visits and things.
And you would say, look at that dog, it's gorgeous, it's majestical. It will
You just want someone to cook you Sunday lunch.
It's house trained. It's wonderful.
Borderline.
So I could just think, is there someone out there who would pet me? Just let me know. Right?
I don't know what to say to that.
Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
So welcome to the programme. Our top story this morning. The Chancellor delivered his spring budget yesterday with tax breaks and work incentives forming the core of his plan for growth.
We tackle the two biggest barriers that stop businesses growing: investment incentives and labour supply. The best investment incentives in Europe, the biggest ever employment package, for disabled people more help, for older people barriers removed, for families feeling the pinch, fuel duty frozen, beer duty cut, energy bills capped, and for parents 30 hours of free childcare for all under fives. Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up. The declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Jeremy Hunt also revealed that inflation is set to drop below 3% by the end of the year, and the UK will avoid recession in 2023.
But there has been some criticism from both Labour and his own party on the tax burden, which will climb to its highest level since the Second World War, with 6 million people being pushed into higher tax brackets. Well,
in the studio with us now with his thoughts on what the Chancellor had to say, political analyst Leon Emirali. And Leon, from your point of view, you're particularly close to this. You've worked at the Treasury. You guys get all the bits and pieces together. You make the snowballs. He fires them. How did you think he did hitting targets?
I think he did what he had to do, which is effectively calm the markets after we've seen a pretty disastrous period over the last few months in British politics. It was steady as she goes, is what they're calling it in the papers today. So I think he'll be quite happy with the set of headlines that he's got. But with this type of thing, there's always devil in the detail, and I think we'll see that detailed analysis come out today and over the next few days, and we'll decide whether or not this has been an overwhelming success or whether there are some political pitfalls further down the line for the government.
I mean, I suppose the backdrop to it, I mean, when we're talking about the fall in living standards, they would try and explain that away as it would be a lot worse if it wasn't for this budget, presumably.
Yes, they will do. And, you know, this is a budget that is, as we say, the highest tax burden since the end of the war. There is going to be tax breaks mainly for the wealthy, with this pension changes and increasing the allowance on pensions. And I think for a lot of people, they'll still be worried about the cost of living. OK, the energy support for bills has been extended. OK, there is now an option for childcare provision. But is it enough to give people that sort of reassurance that actually their standard of living is going to rise on the back of this? I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, well, the early polling by Savanta yesterday, 49% were broadly in support of the budget, but 67% said exactly that they didn't think that enough was being done to help with the cost of living. But that being said, the childcare policy that was announced, really progressive. The Chancellor really keen to point out that 5 times the amount of money is being spent on that policy than on the pensions policy.
Yeah, and it's the generational divide that we're seeing in politics yet again. You've got the sort of wealthy pensioners, if you like, that are being benefiting from this budget, but you've also got millennials, younger people who might be looking for having children in the next few years. They're also benefiting from this childcare announcement. So, given the election is less than 18 months away, it's no surprise that the Chancellor is trying to appeal to each of those demographics to try and get some political support.
But once again, we're being lied to. This childcare thing, it's all dressed up to cover the fact that Brexit has caused big problems on the employment front. It's all well and good saying we'll get people back into work, but there were people in work before Brexit.
Yes, and this is the concern of the government, that we are going down the route of somewhere like Japan, where you've essentially got an ageing workforce and not many people who are economically active. And the result of that in this country is that we've got, yes, an ageing population, but also immigration has slowed, and therefore there are less people in the market to take up these jobs. So this is the government's effort to try and reheat the jobs market, whether it's young people back into work or old people back into work. But there are serious issues with productivity and the workforce.
Leon, you began the discussion by saying that, this budget did what it set out to do, which was to calm the markets. But interestingly, the markets closed yesterday in a worse state than they did after Kwasi Kwarteng's disastrous mini-budget, for a totally separate reason, nothing to do with the budget. As the Chancellor was at the dispatch box yesterday, stock markets were going crazy. Credit Suisse in a lot of trouble. Bank of England having these emergency meetings last night. Is contagion happening following on from Silicon Valley Bank as well?
It seems to be. And when you look at the broader economic outlook, it's a mixed bag, because on one case you've got Jeremy Hunt saying that actually the economy is doing better than we thought it was going to be, that there is more money to play with. But then we look at the global situation and the issue with banks and those who are vulnerable, and we are pretty much on the precipice of something quite similar to what happened in 2008, where that kick-started the global economic crash. And I think there is a fear that this budget may well become very insignificant if the Credit Suisse ordeal continues and goes further than it already is. Then there could even be more action need to be taken by the government to stop that.
So the Swiss Central Bank having to step in there. We'll see what sort of contagion exists, if any, on that. But as part of the budget, as Leon was saying there, free childcare in England will be expanded to cover parents with children as young as 9 months.
Well, to tell us more about all of this is the principal of a nursery in London, the Village Nursery, Jules Robinson. Good morning to you, Jules.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for coming on. Look, I know that childcare is your area of expertise. What did you make of what the Chancellor had to say yesterday?
It's hugely welcomed that there is finally an investment in the sector. But can I just start by saying, Mr. Hunt and you guys, it's not just childcare. I think that it diminishes the sector to call it so. We are a 0 to 5 early education sector, and it's recognised globally in every study that the 0 to 5 years are the most crucial in determining life outcomes, mental, financial, emotional well-being. And we don't just wipe noses and bottoms. We are teachers, and to call it childcare, I think, diminishes that.
That is what they are calling it, and it's really interesting, Jules, to hear you step in there and say, no, this is really what we do. How important is what you do and getting children as young as this? We're preempting all of this. Again, I'm just going to point out that Hunt is taking credit for something that's not going to happen for really another couple of years or so. It's not going to happen as if, this is going to happen on Monday morning or whatever, but still worth waiting for, in your view.
I think so. I mean, it is a great step, and we do welcome it, I think, across the sector. I think it's worth pointing out that as a sector, the Early Years Alliance have estimated that there is currently a 1.7 billion shortfall in the funding. There is that gap. So Mr. Hunt has thrown us a bone of 240 million, and it's hugely welcome, but it still actually covers less than half of the cost of childcare in this country. And I think while it's welcome, it's not enough. You know, I'm from Denmark originally, and some families will pay about £1,000 a year for 50 weeks of childcare, and that's 8 till 6. You know, and that is some of the highest productivity in the OECD, especially amongst women. You know, between the ages of 20 and 40, going back into the workforce. So it is a great thing that the government have done yesterday, and it's a wonderful step, but it is just one step.
Let me just stop you there. You're from Denmark originally, you say there. I'm saying, where in Ireland is that girl from? Is that what is that
Jesus,
accent?
Mary and Joseph, I get that all the time.
Are you Irish or not?
I'm not Irish, Eamonn, but I will adopt you. I did hear that you were an orphan.
And I would go.
It took you 11 minutes to find an adopter. There you go.
Are you wearing rollers this morning? What's in your
hair?
hair?
Those are bunches.
No, these are my glasses and my bunches.
Oh, right. Right. All is apparent. But you're a very interesting woman, Jules, it has to be said, in doing all of this. When you do your job and you see those kids, you know, grow up and go out into the bigger world, it's only primary school they're going to, what is the difference? What's the difference with them?
Do you know, we see children enter our nursery at the age of just below 2, and they are particularly post-COVID babies. They are not social. They don't know how to play. You know, I'm from a very affluent area of Britain, so we have children who are fantastic communicators from the get-go. Mummies and daddies have had proper conversations with them since they were tiny, but they can't play. They aren't able to be social. They are not willing to share. They don't have confidence in themselves. They are not independent. And then when they leave me and we have our summer concert at the very end of the school year before they start school, and they are all very hungry caterpillars who would like to eat everything on the menu, it bursts my heart with pride. We educate them. We do not just care for them. And as part of that, just to go back to the sort of more important and political issue at hand, when the Chancellor yesterday said that he was going to increase ratios from 1 to 4, one adult to 4 children, to 1 to 5, it doesn't sound a lot, but that's 25% less time that each teacher will have to be with each one of these precious, precious beings. And when I say that, what I mean is, children are the most precious resource this country has, any country has. Whether you have them or not, they will be determining every single person's future in this country, and we shouldn't squander the opportunity to invest in them now. It is the most important thing we have.
Amen to that, Jules. And listen, what I think is really interesting in all of this is, you know, anything that identifies where women are actually having to pay to go back to work, and many people dropping out as a result of this, that addresses that square on, puts children in a safe and loving environment whilst women are able to go back to work, has to be welcomed. But do you think you will see a huge increase in demand, and therefore will you be able to meet that? And will you be able to shoulder the cost yourself? Will you have to pass that on to parents? Because as you say, there's a big shortfall in what the government's actually offering to setups like yours.
There is already a retainment and recruitment crisis in the early years sector. COVID didn't help, but as we've just discussed, you know, it is an undervalued sector, and it's a passion, it's a labour of love, and it's not very well paid. So we do have a massive crisis currently. This is going to, I think, need thousands of additional nursery workers in the sector. Where are they coming from? I don't see us being able to meet that demand as a sector as it currently stands. No.
I also think the ratio thing's interesting, because actually this policy that was announced yesterday talks about 9-month-old children. You can't have 5 9-month-old to 1 adult as a ratio, because those children require fundamentally much closer supervision. So I think the detail may well fall apart a little bit.
I agree with you. I welcome this as a step. I think that, as your previous contributor said, you know, the devil is definitely in the detail, and we'll wait and see. It's not happening overnight, And we as a sector are always hopeful. We deal with children, you have to be hopeful. We're hopeful that, this will increase as we go along.
You'll be reporting for duty this morning. It's 6:15 now, so you'll be working today. And I'd just like to say, Jules, she is the principal of the Barnes Village Nursery in London. And your dedication and your love, I would be very proud, very happy if my children were in your care. It's lovely talking to you.
My grandchildren, Eamonn.
Yeah, very true. Bear in mind, you're
Don't
quite
be
right.
silly.
My children and I, my eldest is 34, so yes, they wouldn't be in her care, really. When I think about it, it would be the grandchildren. Jules, thank you so much. A delight talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. So, Mr. Devil in the detail. Interesting to see what it means to that sector.
Absolutely, and we're starting to see reaction from all the different sectors that are being impacted coming out with what they think, whether this works, whether it doesn't work. And this is the issue with budgets. You think it looks good on paper, it could even sound good at the dispatch box, but once it meets the cold, hard reality of real life, you then start to realise whether this works or not. It's exactly the same we saw with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. It wasn't until the market started reacting, business started reacting, that we realised just how big a nightmare that was. And I don't think this is going to be along those lines, but there will certainly be nuances, like we hear from Jules, about how it's going to impact the daily lives of the people who are delivering it.
OK. Daily lives, how it impacts them. That's what we're going to deal now more from our reporters who have been up and down the country to find out what you made of any announcements yesterday. Have a look at this.
The battered red box. It's the talk of the town as politicians and pundits pick through the bones of Jeremy Hunt's Budget Bonanza. But away from Westminster, are we talking about the budget too?
We are talking about the budget. It is something that has a massive impact to our business. As a small local independent business, the budget has increased a lot of our prices that we've never had to experience before.
But what have people been telling the People's Channel? 30 hours a week of free childcare has got us talking.
It's great news for parents. It gives them the opportunity to go back to work sooner, which is so important now for all mums and dads in this country to be able to get to work as soon as possible, especially with the living crisis as well, which is a whole other situation.
There may be hidden talents within the mums and dads that are having to stay at home due to the cost of childcare at the moment. Working whilst having to pay for childcare is a massive no-no to a lot of parents.
The Chancellor says he's proving the doubters wrong. We're not in recession, technically at least. And on the streets of Birmingham, relief.
Well, I'm actually quite happy that at the end of the day that inflation's going to go down, because it's put a lot of pressure onto families and people.
It sounds good, but of course everything's going up, so I suppose at the end of the day we'll be back to sort of square one.
It's very positive, mainly because it'll help with our student budgets and mainly our student finance. As I know at the moment, rent's going up for students and who are living in student halls.
But what about the cut in fuel duty, extended for another year?
The things I was looking for today were kind of around fuel, corporation tax and energy policy. And I think whilst the Chancellor's delivered something fairly boring and bog standard, the things that I was really looking for some kind of excitement and positivity to help me grow my business haven't really delivered.
No budget will please all of the people all of the time, and after the last year in politics, boring and bog standard doesn't seem so bad. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Time is approaching 6:20. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening in the rest of the news.
Commuters face another round of rail strikes today as members of the RMT, 14 operators, walk out once again over paying conditions. Passengers are being warned to expect disruption with the services that are running, starting later and finishing much earlier than usual.
A man and woman arrested in connection with the attempted murder of a senior detective in Northern Ireland have been released. John Caldwell was shot at a sports complex in Omagh last month after coaching a youth football team. A number of other arrests have been made, but all the suspects were released following questioning.
Filming of the Netflix show The Crown's taking place in the Scottish town where the Prince of Wales met his now wife. This series will feature William's time at the University of St Andrews, where he met Kate Middleton in 2001. Valerie Moss has emailed in. Of course I'd adopt you, Eamonn. Lots of cuddles, she says. It's a bit much.
I don't know what Valerie has in mind, but well, I was just looking for a roof over my head, because right after this, we're going to be speaking to the woman who was adopted at the age of 43. And it's an interesting concept when you think that, you know, you've got you're directionless in life, you haven't got a family circle around you and whatever. But anyway, so inspirational has she been that her life story could be made.
Is being made.
Well, obviously has been made.
Yeah.
Into a film. Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the newsroom, where's the adoption emails? It's just the one so far, just FYI. I know Jules did say she'd adopt you.
Well, open up the floodgates. That adoption
just
story coming next. Still to come this morning, just in about 7 minutes. The Treasury Minister, John Glen, will be asking him if he thinks the budget goes far enough, as forecasts predict the biggest squeeze in living standards on record.
And the Queen Consort has met with a very special ballet student who started his dance journey on the rainy streets of Nigeria. Find out more about that just before 7.
Get in touch as usual ways. Have us know your view. Who would adopt me? Isabel says nobody would adopt me. I dare to tempt fate and say she's absolutely
Well, Valerie has already proven me wrong. Good luck, Valerie.
Yeah, but anyway, GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet at GB News. I'm going to show you a clip from a film which is based on a real life story, and the next guest that we're going to introduce, because Jenna McFarlane, originally from Los Angeles, put herself up for adoption at the age of 43.
Yeah, it's an unconventional story, and it's now set to become a Hollywood film called Adopting Audrey, and here's a taste of what audiences can expect.
Hi, my name's Audrey, and I'm looking to be adopted.
How'd your parents die, Audrey?
My parents aren't dead.
Then why are we adopting you?
You ever feel like that, where you're just ready to see something else?
I mean, volcanoes.
Adopting Audrey. I don't know what was wrong with adopting Jenna, But we've got Jenna McFarland now in North Carolina to speak to us. Very lovely to see you, Jenna. Now that I've seen you, I would have adopted you myself, for goodness sake.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to be here. Eamonn and Isabel, thank you for having me.
Well, there's lots of people obviously would have you. Who did have you in the end? Who did, when you said at the age of 43, look, will somebody just take me into their home? Who was the couple that eventually did it?
Well, it's a couple, Steve and Karen Kessler, and they also lived close by in North Carolina. They wrote to me along with about 100 others, and their letter really spoke to me. So I reached out to them and we started getting together. I don't think you could call it dating so much as it was get-togethers and getting to know each other. And just over time, I mean, that's nearly 20 years ago. And the relationship has grown and deepened since then. And I'm pleased to say that I'm part of their family and we're close.
How does that feel like?
Well, growing up in a family where love was difficult, I needed to learn something new. So trust was initially in short supply, and over time I was able to trust them. And they were pretty much my rock. They were reliable. I knew they weren't going to abandon me, much as my biological family. Yes, they had abandoned me when I was 33, so I waited 10 years before I placed the ad. And they did their best, my biological family, but they struggled. We just weren't close. So Steve and Karen were very different. It was a family experience. They didn't always agree. We're politically polar opposites, and they'd be the first to admit that. But I do seek their opinion when I want to broaden my own. And so I feel like I belong.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, look, lots of children and their parents have different political views, and gosh, the world's so polarised, it's almost impossible to find anyone with the same views these days, isn't it? But people might be watching, listening to this and thinking, at 43, why did you feel the need to have parents? And I don't mean that in an unkind way, but, I suppose a lot of 43-year-olds might have lost their parents through death or whatever it might be and just carry on, forge their way through life with their own, perhaps, children and husband. What did you feel you were missing?
Right. That's a question that comes up a lot, is why was I unable to connect with friends and build that family feeling? And for me, something was always missing. So I decided that I wanted to mature in a way that I had not. The trust had, as I mentioned, the trust was missing. So I wanted to foster that within myself. And I guess I have to leap back in time and grow myself up. And the Kesslers certainly provided that experience. I did mature through that experience. I did not know what to expect, and I didn't know what I needed. I leapt into the grand unknown, but I knew that something was missing, something big that was keeping me from developing in life. And they offered that experience unknowingly. None of us knew what we were getting into. And it has turned out to be, I don't know about them, but I can say very beneficial for me.
Jenna, is this something that you would see growing, that you would see catching on, that you could recommend to other people? We're all looking and saying, this is amazing, this woman did this. Could you see this becoming a thing?
Let's see. Well, I can speak for myself on that, and that I didn't know what I was getting into. And it was not easy for me personally because I had to change. I needed to mature. And I also needed to be certain that my parents weren't coming back. And I know that sounds a bit harsh. It's not a criticism of them. But many estrangements, I believe, can be worked out. They are misunderstandings that need to be spoken through and to get a perspective of the other side. For me, I had been threatened with disownment since I was a young girl. My mother struggled in certain areas of her life, and parenting might have been one of them. She just really did her best, and I love my parents, but I knew they weren't going to come back. So that freed me up to think out of the box a bit, as it were.
Yeah. Well, listen, brilliant. We look forward to seeing the film, Adopting Audrey, though I would have kept it at Jenna, which is a much nicer name. Very lovely. Thank you so much for telling us your story. But we've got to talk budget, so we've got to go and say goodbye to you. And that's Jenna McFarlane. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to be back right after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. It's 6:33. We're getting reaction to yesterday's spring budget from the Chancellor, revealing his plan to try and avoid a possible recession and revitalise the economy.
Let's go to Chief Secretary to the Treasury. We're delighted to welcome John Glen. The morning after the day before, John, you see all your hard work turned into a speech. You'll see all the newspapers today and the reaction. Has it given you the reaction that you were looking for?
Well, my job is to focus on making the right decisions, supporting the Chancellor and doing the best I can to get the economy in the best shape so that we can grow, get us out of the situation we're in with respect to growth. It's not as high as I would like, but there was lots of encouragement from the OBR in the fact that we are not going to be in a recession this year. Inflation is down. And obviously the interventions we've made are designed to expand the labour market, encourage businesses to invest so that we can grow the economy faster and provide us more choices and hopefully get that tax burden down.
Do you think that these changes to pensions will bring that many people back into the labour market? Because there's been some criticism this morning that it really won't make any really material difference. And actually, as The Guardian have it, it's a giveaway for the 1% in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, I think the Guardian headlines were pretty predictable, but the driver for this policy was what the BMA wanted for consultants, senior doctors who across the country are deciding not to stay for perhaps the last 10 years of their working life. We need those people to make that decision to continue to work in the NHS right now, given the backlogs. I recognise it has implications across the whole economy doing it this way, but there are also lots of senior people in other professions who, if we could have done it quickly, which is very doubtful, for just one profession, would have then launched legal challenges. So that's why we did it in the way that we did, but it will have a direct impact. And of course, Wes Streeting, just a few months ago, the shadow spokesman for the Labour Party, said that he would have done the same. I don't know whether that's their position today after the Guardian headline.
Well, he would have done the same because you're stealing all their policies. You're sitting, you've looked at their homework, you've snatched their homework, and you're going to get a gold star for it.
I sit there and think, what can we do to grow the economy as well as possible, whilst maintaining investment in public services, avoiding any return to austerity.
But John, let me ask you this: does it really matter when we look at those headlines overnight and we look at the Credit Suisse bank and what's happened there? I mean, that's a couple of American banks now. You've got Credit Suisse, you've got the Swiss National Bank stepping in to stabilise things. Does it matter what you think of, what you do in relation to the global market? Because how unstable is that? How worried about that are you?
Well, Treasury ministers don't comment on market activities, but I'm very aware of what's happening. I was a city minister for a very long time, for 4.5 years, and the regulators will be working very closely with those institutions affected. I mean, I was very pleased at the weekend that Sam Woods and the Prudential Regulatory Authority in the UK were working very closely with the Treasury to make sure that we could find a solution for Silicon Valley Bank subsidiary in the UK, which was a great outcome. But obviously I'm aware of what's happening, and regulators in Switzerland and in other jurisdictions will be working with institutions to try and bring clarity and stability to the markets. Obviously the adjustment from higher interest rate environment has had implications for how financial institutions function.
And just on that, how confident are you that there won't be contagion within the markets, within the banks, here in the UK?
We have excellent regulators in the UK. I work very closely with them, and I know that we will do everything that is necessary should those conditions change in the UK.
I just want to pick up on the point you're making about, the global picture. And, people were saying yesterday you're taking all the credit for reducing inflation by the end of the year. But, arguably that's the picture for everybody. We're seeing cost of energy going down and all the rest of it. Where you could have made a difference was on taxes. We're hearing yesterday living standards expected to fall by the largest amount since records began. And as you know, the tax burden the highest in 70 years. Why did you increase corporation tax? It's the big one that everyone said was not necessary. Your own party, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example.
Well, I'm very aware of Jacob's views. They'll never change. But the reality is that we still have the lowest corporation tax rate in the G7. And with this, what we call full expensing, where basically all investment in new capital and machinery can be set against tax, that will mean a 27 billion tax cut for businesses over the next 3 years. That is a significant stimulant to growth in the economy. And what we saw, and the question that should be asked of those who think we should maintain the 19%, something that Jacob and others voted for 2 years ago, was what effect did that actually have on investment? And the truth is that it didn't give us the investment that we wanted. And so now we've linked those two together. We still have the most competitive corporation tax in the G7, but we're creating a massive incentive to invest.
The money's run out in the meter, and they had an energy.
The incentive was so good. It didn't want me to ask him about how it was perhaps overcomplicated and people want simplicity. Is he coming back? I'm wondering, John Glen, will we see him again? Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Just what we wanted to know from you is, do you feel that this budget has impacted positively on your life as well? For instance, the energy premium towards the poorest people in the land. That's come to an end. That's a good thing. We were talking about the childcare situation. That's a good thing, though it's going to take a long time to do defence investment. That's a good thing, is it? Let us know what you think always here to go through the newspapers. Now let's have Emma Burnell and Freddie Gray. And Freddie, let's start with the Telegraph and the Swiss bank crash, which we were talking about. The whole thing is, of course, we're all frightened and we're all saying, where's this going to stop?
Well, the mood music from Jeremy Hunt was sort of attempting to be, almost half-heartedly attempting to be positive. And as it was happening, there was this crisis brewing. Last night it was a little bit more stable, but the Telegraph, rather interestingly, I think, has splashed today with Swiss bank crash stokes fears of new global crisis. And, of course, the OBR forecasts yesterday were reasonably positive. Narrowly avoid a recession, 0.2 contraction, inflation coming down to 3% at the end of the year. This could all mean nothing if this contagion, people use this word contagion, it's rather a scare word, I know, if this contagion spreads across the banking sector and we have another 2008-style crash and crisis in the banking sector. The good news, or I suppose the sort of less bad news, is that Credit Suisse is it's been known to be in trouble for a long time. And I think its Saudi investors sort of pulled back yesterday, and this caused a panic run on it. I think the Swiss have now stepped in to rescue it. If Credit Suisse, it will be very interesting to see what happens in the markets today. If Credit Suisse goes down, does that spread to other major banks? Britain, I saw Glen saying yesterday, Britain's banks are thought to be better funded, better regulated. They soon may face an enormous test. How they reply to it will be interesting.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? You know, these tests. Why do we have accident-prone lenders in the wake of the global financial crisis? Why is Credit Suisse allowed to be accident-prone? It beggars belief, really, that we could ever be in the situation we were in again after everything that happened. Well,
and a lot of the regulation, a lot of the sort of testing and so on was set up for a financial universe in which interest rates are incredibly low and the government is effectively fire-hosing the global economy with quantitative easing and massive stimuluses on a regular basis. And what happens now in an era of higher interest rates, we're starting to find out. That's what happened with Silicon Valley Bank.
Emma, what did you take away from the budget?
I think a budget is there to do several different jobs. It's there to, first of all, set the policy agenda for the year for the government. It's there for the government to try and win the next election. Let's not put any bones on that. It's there to try and appeal to the newspapers and their readers.
It appealed to the Sun today.
Appeal to the Sun, there was a direct appeal to the Sun, where they got a shout-out from Jeremy Hunt for their successful campaign to stop the fuel duty freeze. Fuel duty freeze hasn't happened since 2010. Fuel duty freeze is it's just a misnomer that was ever going to happen. It's politically impossible for a Tory Chancellor to do that at the moment. Their backbenchers wouldn't have it. And that's the other job, it's to manage the relationship between the government and their backbenchers. I think that last part it did very successfully. I think from what I'm hearing, there doesn't seem to be nearly as much unrest on the Tory backbenchers as there might have been, as there was a few months ago. We'll see if that succeeds after the May elections, which is the next big actual test where the government is not only tested against themselves but tested against the country. For me, there was just one figure that I took away from this budget altogether, which is that the standard of living is going down by 6%. And ultimately, that's what's going to matter to ordinary people like us.
Interesting on the fuel duty freeze. I was reading that actually what the government's going to spend to enable that is going to be more than the $5 billion pledged to defence over the next 2 years, which I think when you break it down, and actually also that this won't necessarily benefit the white van man, is often the wealthiest who'll stand to gain from this, who have more than one car, often the gas guzzlers as well, the big expensive 4x4s.
Well, the Tories, I think, have decided that fuel and energy are two areas they're willing to protect, but I mean, essentially, with the fuel duty and, to ruin another story that we were supposed to get into, the fuel duty and the alcohol duty is very tinkering, very kind of, things that will make an impact possibly in the long run on the more substantial stuff and very, very superficial stuff. And I hate it when Tory chancellors sort of say, oh, we're doing something that will help drinkers in the pub, because it's the way they think they understand the working.
Totally agree with you, mate. That makes me want to chuck, basically. The idea, British ale may be warm, but the duty on a pint is frozen.
Yes.
And that's going to make everybody happy and solve all our problems, that you get drunk and you get liver disease and, you put up the bills in the NHS. But it's true.
No,
why did they try and make out this is a really good thing and it's fantastic when that puts more people in hospital, leads to domestic abuse, there's all sorts of things. Well, it does.
It's
I'm all for. I'm all for cheaper alcohol, really. But I don't think. But I don't think.
Thanks, Freddie. I was feeling bad.
But I agree that beer is still extremely expensive and people still drink too much, and it's real sort of tinkering. It's real gesture budgeting, and even
the main thing that the pubs wanted was to look after their energy costs in terms of lighting and heating and cooking and staffing and all that sort of thing.
Because they're facing an enormous crisis.
Yeah,
we're going to see more pubs shutting. We are seeing pubs shutting, not quite at the scale that was expected, thanks to the fuel duty stuff. The energy stuff. But yeah, I mean, pubs are in a terrible crisis, and this isn't enough to help.
No, and this is the problem, isn't it? I think there is a sense that we're just tinkering at the edges while Rome burns. And I'm not sure this budget did enough, narratively or substantially, to make a difference, to make it feel different in 6 months' time.
But what he did do was steady the markets with what was going on in Switzerland as well with that bank and things. So maybe he did what he could. Let us know your views on that. Now, Emma, I don't know how you got up today, if an alarm clock went off but we go to the Mail. And this is page 4 in the Mail, and this is something that
It's like I wrote this.
Yeah. I do find it ironic that you've brought me in at this time in the morning to tell me that it's really bad for me to start work this early. But apparently, starting work early, rising early can be very bad for our...
Everything.
Basically everything. Our mental health...
Blood pressure,
physical health, all sorts of things. So it does make it a lot harder for us to... So if we're rising early, we're also not having those evening hours that traditionally were almost seen as your reward for work. You get off work at 5 or 6 or whenever, and then you've got this leisure time to spend with your friends, spend with your family.
Do you know what I do in that leisure time? Last night, you get home, it's 5, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock for me last night, and you're so tired, as soon as you eat something, you're asleep. There's no point saying I'm going to watch something or I'm going to have a bath.
Yeah, but Eamonn, you started your day
at 3
a.m. So by 6 p.m, it's natural that you want to go to sleep.
But this is the problem.
But I'm saying, there's no advantage in starting so early so
you
that
just don't have an evening. You just work longer hours.
You don't have an evening.
I mean, I've shifted my alarm clock. When I'm not coming in to talk to you lovely people, my alarm clock used to go off at 7 for no good reason. I'm a freelancer. There is no need for me to have done that. So I've shifted it to 8 now.
Show off.
I know, right? I'm so sorry, Isabel.
I'm really, the last time I was asleep at 8 a.m.
But I'm not. But the problem is that my body is now just used to it. So I wake up before that alarm every day now, and then I'm tired later in the day. And we are all. I realise I am asking sympathy from exactly the wrong people. But yeah, I do think that we should be more conscious just of the ways that we are able to manage our life and the ways that people could, governments or whatever, could enable us to manage this life better. Because I do think that work-leisure balance is so missing from any of our national conversation.
Yes. You know, Freddie, I've been presenting breakfast television for 35 years or so. And I've had it worked out with scientists on various programmes and whatever. My natural waking up time is 8:45. So they're absolutely right, and I feel that, and I never wake up before that if I'm off. So basically, forgive anything that I say now because I should be asleep.
Did the doctors tell you what your sort of usual amount? Because different people have different needs on sleep.
I need about 24 hours of sleep.
I like to think I need more. I need 10.
100%.
But I think 4 is. Some people just need 4.
No, I wish.
I think there's a difference between getting by on 4 and what you need. A lot of people say...
Some people genuinely can. You know, our executive producer, Lucy, she does not need to sleep. I mean, obviously she does, but...
Well, I think she does.
You know, someone like Rishi Sunak has talked about how he really struggles with all this international travel because he is someone who needs his sleep. And I actually found it quite endearing seeing him with his glasses in the Commons yesterday, because, he's just done a whole bunch of, international flights and summits and the like.
And frankly, we want the people in charge of the country reasonably rested and at their their cognitive best. And this is what this story is saying. We're not necessarily always at our cognitive best if we're forcing ourselves into this weird pattern that doesn't work for everybody.
Freddie, tell us about Jack Andrews.
Oh, yes.
At the Cheltenham Festival. He's a jockey.
This is the front page of today. So he's a jockey, and the special thing about him is he's 6'4".
Gosh.
Apparently he's not often picked for the horses he wants because there's a natural prejudice against him. But he's meant to be a very good jockey. I don't know a lot about jockeying. I am very interested in Cheltenham. I understand you're going today.
I am.
Well, but you might want to bet on him. He's on a horse called A Night in Lambourne. And it doesn't actually say in the piece when this horse is running, but look out for A Night in Lambourne.
Just remember the outfit, that's how I work.
Remember the
Not for the jockey that's about twice as high as anybody else.
Yeah,
and it's difficult. I mean, jockeys do amazing. They lose weight amazingly quickly. They gain weight amazingly quickly according to what they have to do. Apparently, if you're 6'4", this is harder to do. Although, I'm not 6'4", and I find it hard to but
it's amusing that he's pictured above Peter Crouch.
Yes,
it's like the world's tallest people descending on Cheltenham today.
Non-natural jockey. But it's been. I mean, there was a very funny clip going around Twitter about in 2004, Gordon Brown did a budget during Cheltenham. And there was a sort of genuine outrage in the country and in Parliament that anyone could dare, any chancellor would dare to do. It's happened again, but no one cares now.
No one cares now, that's the difference. Guys, thank you very much indeed. We care what you have to say. Both Emma and Freddie will be back in 40 minutes' time. The time now is 6:51. This week, the Queen Consort met a viral sensation who is set to become a Disney star.
Yes, Her Majesty was visiting Elmhurst Ballet School in Birmingham to mark the centenary and met a scholarship student who started their journey on the rainy streets of Nigeria. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker has more.
Springing back into action. Elmhurst Ballet School, now 100 years old, teaches the next generation of pirouetting performers. Their royal patron, the Queen Consort, was here this week celebrating the ballet school's centenary, a month late due to COVID.
She said to me there was absolutely no way that I wasn't coming. She was really apologetic. She was like, I'm so sorry, but we absolutely were committed to coming. And I was like, well, you've shown that you are, because you're here.
Jessica Ward is the principal of Elmhurst and is grateful for Camilla's years of commitment.
Her Majesty is very supportive, and it's really about kind of advocating for the school, helping us build our school community, celebrate it. I think the other really beautiful thing about our relationship is she's really interested in the people.
Elmhurst students come from far and wide. Anthony Maidu from Nigeria became a viral sensation when a video of him dancing on the rainy streets of Lagos was watched more than 16 million times. His story's now being made into a Disney documentary, following Anthony's journey from Africa to winning an Elmhurst scholarship and pursuing a ballet career.
Hello.
The Queen Consort met Anthony, who wants to inspire other young people to pursue their dreams, whatever their background.
It was such an honour to meet her because loads of kids around the world don't have the same opportunity that I do. I just want to let them know that whatever they want to do, they should stick to it and never give up.
During the visit, the Queen Consort was entertained by students on the stage. Sophie Walters is from Australia and performed in 2 of the numbers.
People back home, they're really supportive of the royal family and the Commonwealth, obviously, and to tell them that I've performed on the other side of the world for Her Majesty, they'll just be blown away.
In a speech, the Queen Consort praised the skillful students and told them she herself was familiar with ballet shoes. Her Majesty revealed she'd joined Silver Swans classes for elderly ballet dancers. Camilla may not have performed on the stage, but it's not long until the global spotlight is on her and her husband, the King, when they are crowned in Westminster Abbey in less than 8 weeks' time. Cameron Walker, GB News, Birmingham.
It is an amazing story, and Anthony Maidu, I'm just thinking back to the newspapers, he's got something in common with 6'4" Jack Andrews, the jockey. Big, tall guy for dancing. Yeah. So, and to dance in the rain. Have you ever danced in the rain?
Not like that, but I do love the ballet, and it makes me want to go and see the ballet. And it's kind of like a Billy Elliot, modern twist on the Billy Elliot story, isn't it? From Nigeria to Disney. with a bit of royalty thrown in. Love it.
Emma and Freddie have stayed with us. Life expectancy. Dan seems to probably be very good for it, Emma.
Absolutely.
But life is too short. Tell us why it's getting shorter for us here in the UK.
So the UK has dropped, I believe, 10 places to 29th in the world in terms of life expectancy, which, given that we're a G7 country, is really very bad. There are many reasons why this might be. In part, some of the things that we've already been talking about, the way that our lives are structured here.
But have we actually fallen, or have other places risen?
I think it's a
because I certainly, personally, don't really want to live to 120.
Well, I mean, there is that. The idea of, of living a much lower quality of life for longer is not necessarily the trade-off we want to make. But I think in part, lots of people, there is a real disparity of life expectancy between richer and poorer areas. And this is something we really should be looking at, because if what you need are good services, a job that is healthier than we currently have, a lifestyle that is healthier than we currently have. These are all things...
Do you know what I think that can kill you? Loneliness.
Well, that's a very, very current practice that people are really exploring, because you're absolutely right. Loneliness is incredibly bad for us. And even if, like myself, you live on your own, making sure that you see people every day, that you're interacting with people all the time, it's so important.
Well, America, the most powerful, many would say the greatest country in the world, has had declining life expectancy for several years now, which is staggering, really, because you expect progress to mean that we continue increasing our life expectancy. Obviously, we don't necessarily all want to live to 120, but there is this concern that there's something deeply wrong with modern societies now, and it's actually affecting, in America it's fentanyl opioid overdoses is thought to be contributing.
Which again comes back to loneliness.
Obesity is a terrible problem. There is the pandemic added to different sorts of deaths, unexpected deaths. It's if you tend towards gloom, which as you probably know I do, it's not good news.
He says with a big cheery smile.
It's a big cheery smile. Yeah. Well, no, death's coming. There we go.
Well, that's a cheery message for first thing in the morning.
So the first hour of the programme's coming as well, coming to an end. Emma and Freddie, thank you very much indeed. So a gloomy morning, talking about the budget. That's what we're doing throughout the morning. That's what everybody's doing throughout the morning. But we'll do it differently. Please do stay with us, and we'll be back right after this.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Chancellor unveils his £21 billion plan for growth as the country avoids recession.
Hello there, very good morning. Good to see you. It is 7 o'clock on the dot on Thursday, the 16th of March. Tune into breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up. The declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
It was a defiant budget, but Jeremy Hunt's facing criticism from both Labour and some Conservatives over proposals that will see 6 million people pay higher taxes.
Now, all of this comes amid better than expected forecasts, with inflation predicted to plummet to under 3% by the end of the year, and the prediction that the UK will avoid recession in 2023.
Meanwhile, Credit Suisse announced it'll take a $50 billion loan from the Swiss Central Bank after its share price plummeted. The drop wiped billions from the stock market, prompting the Bank of England to hold emergency talks overnight to assess possible risk to the UK economy.
And as the Chancellor provides an extra £200 million to tackle what he calls the curse of potholes, we'll be speaking to the crusader and the activist Mr. Pothole and finding out if he thinks this cash injection is enough to fix your road.
And this is the point where we normally would encourage you to email in with your views, but I've just taken a look at them and I'm going to say don't send any more in. They're all like, I'll adopt Eamonn. Karen says we're Everton fans, but she would still take you in. Sue in Cheshire, I'll adopt you, Eamonn. Already love you to bits, even when you're grumpy. Stephen says, does Ruth come with Eamonn if I adopt him? Sounds like Stephen's after a bit of Ruth. Graham says, I'd be happy to adopt him on the condition he retires and looks after my garden.
You can go and do one, Graham. No,
that's not what I was after.
This is in reaction to the story of a woman who's 42 years of age, and she said, you know what, I've no friends, I don't get on with my parents, I have nowhere to go, and I'd like to be adopted. And she was, and for 20 years, she's been adopted, and her story has been made into a film called Adopting Audrey.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And so that's a very good story. If you've got a story to tell, who would you love to adopt? Who would you love to bring home and just love and look after?
Do you know, when it was the Turkey-Syria earthquake, that little baby that was pulled out of the rubble,
yes.
I was this close.
Yeah.
Oh, luckily, though, she was adopted by family. That's
Or
the happy ending to
maybe
that story.
you want to adopt an animal as well. Let us know after this.
So it is our top story this morning. The Chancellor delivered his first budget with tax breaks and work incentives forming the core to his plan for growth.
We tackle the two biggest barriers that stop businesses growing: investment incentives and labour supply. The best investment incentives in Europe, the biggest ever employment package, for disabled people more help, for older people barriers removed, for families feeling the pinch, fuel duty frozen, beer duty cut, energy bills capped, and for parents 30 hours of free childcare for all under fives. Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up. The declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Mr Hunt also had a word to say on inflation set to go below 3% by the end of the year, and saying that the UK would avoid recession.
Well, in the last half hour, we spoke to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Glen, who told us measures to expand the workforce would be a boost to the economy.
To focus on making the right decisions, supporting the Chancellor and doing the best I can to get the economy in the best shape so that we can grow, get us out of the situation we're in with respect to growth. It's not as high as I would like, but there's lots of encouragement from the OBR in the fact that we are not going to be in a recession this year. Inflation is down. And obviously the interventions we've made are designed to expand the labour market, encourage businesses to invest so that we can grow the economy faster and provide us more choices and hopefully get that tax burden down.
We get reaction to this throughout the programme this morning. Chief Economist and Advisor for the Centre of Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price. And joining us again, political analyst Leon Emirali. Vicky, first of all, I'm looking at just some of the headlines here. One of them screams out from the Metro, the easy does it budget. How would you describe it?
Well, I would say that Jeremy Hunt has been quite lucky that the economy has done slightly better than he had expected. He's been collecting a lot of money through VAT because of higher inflation. People have stayed at work more than had been anticipated, so loads of income tax are being collected as a result. And also, of course, prices of energy are going down, and therefore the subsidy that he has had to make to keep households with the electricity or the energy price guarantee that has been in place for a while has also cost him an awful lot less. So he's been very lucky from that point of view. But you were mentioning earlier his boast, if you like, that we're not going to have, we're going to avoid, in fact, recession in 2023. Well, the data coming out from the Office of Budget Responsibility does indeed suggest that we're not going to see the 1.4% decline that they had expected originally, but we are still going to see a drop of 0.2% in GDP in 2023, with a recovery coming afterwards. So we're not avoiding recession as such. We are avoiding technical recession, which basically means 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP. So it's really sort of semantics in a way, but we're still not going to be seeing any serious growth over 2023.
Yeah, look, avoiding technical recession, but tell that to the ordinary person who's going to see their living standards declining. And, you know, there was an opportunity, was there not, given the Chancellor, as you describe it, has been quite lucky to cut taxes, and he hasn't done that?
That's true. In fact, if anything, it's going the other direction. What's happening is, of course, that because of the freezing of personal allowances, lots and lots of people are entering paying tax for the first time, because basically you're getting more income, even though it's not keeping in line with inflation. So, yes, real incomes are declining, but nevertheless, in nominal terms, they're going up. It means, therefore, that many people who are never paying any tax are now going to be paying tax for the first time because allowances are not rising in line with inflation. And also, many more people are coming into the higher tax bracket too. So what the Chancellor is doing is, in fact, collecting huge amount of extra revenue that way and then giving a little bit back in different ways. So that's what we're seeing right now. And you're absolutely right. Real disposable incomes are still declining and are likely to decline in 2023, almost as much as they did in 2022.
Vicky, just before we say goodbye to you, what's going on with these banks? A couple in America and an offshoot here in London, and then the Credit Suisse bank as well. Why are we beginning to see, and should we be getting nervous about these joining up, cracks beginning to show in the banking system?
It is a bit of a worry. The Credit Suisse problems are quite specific to Credit Suisse, you could argue, because there is a feeling that it hasn't been properly managed. This has had loads of scandals in the past, and particularly its wealth division saw a lot of exit of funds in the last few weeks, and there was almost a concern of a run on the bank. So the Swiss central bank has intervened and given it an extra loan, and see what happens. I think we're going to see some changes in the structure of Credit Suisse probably coming along. But what's happening more generally is, of course, there is concern that there could be contagion, that other banks may find that, some loss of confidence that affects them as well. What's happened in the US is a bit different. And that's a worry which I think is probably wider than just the Credit Suisse issue. It was a special bank. This was the Silicon Valley Bank. There's a couple of others who have been in difficulty, which has been relying a lot on deposits from the tech sector. Tech sector has not been doing well. And what this bank had been doing is investing in bonds and mortgage securities, which, of course, have seen the value drop very significantly because of higher interest rates. So what it does mean, I think, looking ahead, is that there is going to be a rethink, probably from the central banks, how fast they raise interest rates from here on, especially, look at the UK. We're going to have low inflation in the future. Why do you need much higher interest rates to come? So I think they are very linked. The banking crisis that we fear and high interest rates is something that I think should be on the watch of central banks right now.
OK, Vicky Price with the economic picture. Thank you. I want to bring in Leon Emerali now for a sort of political take on all of this, because you've been inside the Treasury, presumably on budget days as well. Really interesting to look at the picture on the front of the Mail, all the hands wrapped around the Chancellor, lots of thumping of the back, and they obviously very pleased with their man. Devil is in the detail, and the headline for the Mail, is it enough to turn the tide? If the Tories want to win at the next election, they need to be beating the Labour Party when it comes to polling on the economy. Will this go some way to doing that?
Well, if you talk to a Tory MP, Isabel, they will say this is the beginning of the big fight back for the Conservatives. And in a sense, it may well be. And I think if you look at the record of this government over the past few months, it's not been all that bad. We've had the renegotiation of Brexit, we've had action on trying to stop small boats, and now we've had what seems to be a fairly successful budget. So this could be the beginning of the changing of the tide, but it's going to take a lot more to overturn a 20-point lead than just changes and tinkering around things like fuel duty, beer, the cost of a pint of beer, and, tax allowances and all the rest of it. So I think that this needs to be part of a much wider effort for the Conservatives to prove that they are the proper custodians, the right custodians of the economy.
And it seems as though the biggest criticism of this budget coming from, you could say, the left, is this giveaway for the 1%. But, there is also an argument that you've got these junior doctors out on strike and the Labour Party saying you need to pay public sector workers more, and then you've got them saying, well, hang on, you're giving too much to these senior doctors. So, I don't think the Tories will be too worried about that, will they?
Well, they won't be, but when you sort of dig a bit deeper, we're looking at potentially 15,000 doctors going back into the workforce on the back of this scheme. It will cost the Exchequer £60,000 a year to bring back those 15,000.
Expensive.
It's very expensive. And you think, well, why don't you just put that money into the current system, keep your staff happy so that we can avoid strikes and get a functioning workforce? But it isn't that simple. And I think that this is going to be politically one of the big issues for the government. Is this going to be framed as the Tories helping out the already rich? And I think Labour are already punting that line, and it's probably going to be the one they run with.
Thanks very much indeed, Leon, for that. We're now going to talk pensions. It may make you glaze over, it may not, if you've got one, a worthwhile one, because no matter we talk about this 1% and these very rich people and whatever who've got big pensions, a lot of them may not see it that way. So let's now speak to Tom Selby, Head of Retirement Policy at AJ Bell. What changes are being made to pensions? And I know it's difficult, but try not to make us glaze over with this, OK?
Sure. So there are two broad limits to how much you can save in pensions in a tax incentivised way. So one is the lifetime allowance, so that caps the amount that you can save in a tax incentivised way.
That was about £1 million quid or so.
Just over £1 million quid,
right.
yeah.
So the plus with all of this is they say you can take out a quarter of this, right? You can take out 60 odd thousand pounds.
Yeah, so a quarter of your lifetime allowance tax-free, yes.
So now he's saying there's no limit on the 1 million. This could become 2 million or 3 million, is that right?
So that's right, yeah.
But you can still only take out 268,000 quid.
Correct, yes. So
look at you, Eamonn.
Get me.
Pensions expert.
You don't need me.
It's not as if this affects me, is it?
So that £268,000, the maximum tax-free cash you can take, is going to stay the same. And that's actually one way that the Treasury might, over time, be able to rein back in a bit of the cost that it's spending on removing the lifetime allowance and also increasing the annual allowance, so the amount that you can pay in each year. So that, for most people, is going to go up from £40,000 to £60,000. There's a couple of different annual allowances. There's a bit of complexity in there. But by freezing that tax-free cash amount over time, they'll be able to save a bit of money as well.
Could I ask a question on behalf of my colleague here, who said to me today, and it's true, because people basically want to say, what do you get out of it by saving for a pension? How does that make us better off? How is that different than just saving money?
So you get tax relief up front.
OK, so if you were to put £10,000 into your pension, you'd get tax relief on that?
You would get tax relief on money up to the limits that we talked. So we don't have this lifetime limit anymore, which is a good thing for people who are saving, but we have that annual limit. So as long as you save within £60,000 from the next tax year for most people, then that will be tax-free. That money then gets to grow tax-free as well, so there's no capital gains tax to pay on the money as it grows over time. And then, as you say, when you get to that point of withdrawing your money, you can get a quarter of it tax-free as well. There's also quite generous death benefits around pensions as well, all a bit macabre. But if you're looking at passing money on to relatives or loved ones when you get older, then you can potentially do that tax-free with a pension as well.
I don't want to ask a political question to you, but politics does feed into this because we're 1 year away from another election, potentially. The Labour Party, certainly The Guardian, the Resolution Foundation, critical of this policy. So presumably if a Labour government comes in next year, will they row back on it? And if they do, that makes planning for your pension, taking this action that's possible from presumably the near future, even more risky, doesn't it?
So one of the first phone calls I got yesterday from a journalist off the back of these announcements was asking exactly that question, which kind of shows the problem that we have with pension rules at the moment. Pension rules change over and over again. As you say, that makes people not as confident as they could be about what is a significant long-term financial commitment. So, as I said, the tax incentives are good in pensions, but you're being asked to lock your money away potentially for 20, 30, 40 years. And so you're right. The danger is, we've seen Labour are saying they're going to oppose these changes. The danger is we're going to get these changes come through. They'll simplify the system. They'll make saving in a pension more attractive for lots of people. But we may get a new government comes in that reverses them and makes it all more complicated again. So it's hard for people to make decisions.
Yeah, but Tom, why would Jeremy Hunt have implemented this move? What is the advantage? Who is he appealing to? What do they get out of it by removing the £1 million cap?
So there's a specific aim here to ensure that senior doctors aren't quitting the health service. That's been a huge problem over the last few years. Thousands of senior doctors leaving the health service.
It's the doctor's tax.
Exactly, yeah. So
just explain why that is.
So because doctors in the NHS benefit from very generous, what's called defined benefit pensions, and they're high salary workers as well, a calculation will be made to figure out exactly how much lifetime allowance and annual allowance they use each year. Now, if you're a high salary doctor and you've got a very generous pension, then there's a decent chance that you're going to be breaching either the lifetime allowance or the annual allowance, and you'll have to pay a tax charge on the money as a result.
So it wouldn't pay to stay in the job.
So there were doctors who were finding themselves in a position where it simply wasn't worth working. So they were either reducing their hours, which is clearly a bad thing with the NHS at the moment, given where it is, or they were just quitting altogether.
Some people are so lucky. I'm just thinking, you know, we sit here and talk about these things, and how lucky are some people in life who have finished with full salary
Final
pensions.
salary schemes, well, those are long gone, haven't they? The civil
No, but they're not that long gone.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there are people watching us today and listening to us today and who are basically not doing any work but living off the money that they getting the same amount of money via pension that they earned when they were working.
Small number of people, though, to be fair, isn't it, that are in that lucky position?
Yes, yes.
So I just want to ask, because, I mean, pension savings, they've been sort of progressively eroded. Gordon Brown started tinkering with this. George Osborne followed suit. Does what has been announced by Jeremy Hunt change all of that, or has the damage really been done?
Well, so what's been announced by Jeremy Hunt makes the allowances more generous for everyone. Now, clearly not everybody is going to be able to shovel £60,000 a year into a pension or build up unlimited amounts over their lifetime, so build up over £1 million. So those are the people who are going to specifically benefit from this. In terms of the overall system, one of the benefits should, in theory, be that things get a bit simpler. So the lifetime allowance is horrifically complicated, even for someone like me who spends all day thinking about this stuff. It's horrendously complicated. Complexity in pensions is one of the big problems that we find. It really puts people off saving for the future, which is something that I think everyone agrees is we want to do. So if these changes are able to stick and we end up with a simpler system, I think that will be a good thing. But as you touched on, the danger is that we may get a future government further down the line who decides this is all too generous, and we get that complexity all coming back in again.
Nightmare.
See, I find myself working hard to top up my pension, so being miserable doing that and realising I'm not going to live to collect it.
Well, that would be awful.
Well, that's
Am I in your will?
Oddly enough, no. But that could change. Who knows?
We digress. Tom Selby, you always make it so easy to understand, even for us, Eamonn and I, who don't naturally take much interest
Eamon's
in
an expert.
pensions. He is an expert. Thank you very much. Head of
Thanks for your
Retirement
enthusiasm, Tom. Thank you very much
Bell.
indeed.
Well, you make it very easy to understand,
Very
Tom.
good.
Thank you.
Jeff Moody, he's put together a package of what people want up and down the country. Did their wish list come true? Let's find out.
The battered red box. It's the talk of the town as politicians and pundits pick through the bones of Jeremy Hunt's Budget Bonanza. But away from Westminster, are we talking about the budget too?
We are talking about the budget. It is something that is has a massive impact to our business. As a small local independent business, the budget has increased a lot of our prices that we've never had to experience before.
But what have people been telling the People's Channel? 30 hours a week of free childcare has got us talking.
It's great news for parents. It gives them the opportunity to go back to work sooner, which is so important now for all mums and dads in this country to be able to get to work as soon as possible, especially with the living crisis as well, which is a whole other situation.
There may be hidden talents within the mums and dads that are having to stay at home due to the cost of childcare at the moment. Working whilst having to pay for childcare is a massive no-no to a lot of parents.
The Chancellor says he's proving the doubters wrong. We're not in recession, technically at least. And on the streets of Birmingham, relief.
Well, I'm actually quite happy that at the end of the day that inflation's going to go down, because it's put a lot of pressure onto families and people.
It sounds good, but of course everything's going up, so I suppose at the end of the day we'll be back to sort of square one.
It's very positive, mainly because it'll help with our student budgets and mainly our student finance. As I know at the moment, rent's going up for students and who are living in student halls.
But what about the cut in fuel duty, extended for another year?
The things I was looking for today were kind of around fuel, corporation tax and energy policy. And I think whilst the Chancellor's delivered something fairly boring and bog standard, the things that I was really looking for some kind of excitement and positivity to help me grow my business haven't really delivered.
No budget will please all of the people all of the time, and after the last year in politics, boring and bog standard doesn't seem so bad. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well explained, Jeff. Good to hear from you. 7:21 is the time. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise.
Commuters are facing another round of rail strikes today. Members of the RMT union at 14 operators are walking out once again over pay and conditions. Passengers are being warned to expect disruption, with the services that are running starting later and finishing earlier.
Ministers and health service unions are close to a breakthrough, though, in talks to resolve their pay dispute. According to the Guardian newspaper, it says the announcement could come as early as today. The government says the discussions have been constructive and that talks are still ongoing.
And we touched on this in the newspapers. The UK is falling down the global ranks when it comes to life expectancy. According to research published in the Royal Society of Medicine, the country has fallen from 7th globally 70 years ago to 29th.
Even when you think 70 years ago, we were 7th, which obviously is not top of the tree. So who's doing better than us in terms of life expectancy?
I mean, I instantly think of Japan, countries like that, where they eat lots
or the
of
Mediterranean
sushi.
diet.
I don't know. Oh, there is that island or part of Italy. There's a place in Italy where they have the highest life expectancy.
And they
remember
just
watching a
guzzle
documentary.
olive oil, do they?
I think that's what it is. And they have their family around them, keeps them mentally...
stimulated.
Yeah, it keeps them young.
Do you reckon stimulation is the key?
Well, they say having your grandchildren with you a lot helps you stay young.
Interesting. Let us know what you think would make you live longer. However, I am very much of the opinion you do want to live longer if you're not living better.
I agree.
Right?
I absolutely agree.
Definitely. I also think you should retire with your friends or your family. You shouldn't just go into a care home with just anybody and all sorts of
Oh,
strangers
I'd love to
there.
go into a care home with my best friend.
Yes. You have a few of your friends with
my
you.
husband, obviously.
Have a
He is
few-
my best friend.
Have drinks on a Friday night and a Saturday night and a Sunday night and Monday.
You don't drink?
No, but I enjoy the
social
bon ami,
setting.
the whole
yeah.
socialisation.
What do they call them? The villages, the retirement village.
Retirement village.
In with your mates.
Yeah, you've got to be with friends, I could say.
Got it.
Anyway, coming up next, FIFA, the football world governing body, discussing human rights abuse in Qatar. Bit late now, I would have thought. We'll be finding out what happens next. Paul Coit with that. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
27 minutes past the hour. Hello, good morning to you. Hope your morning's going well.
Yes, welcome back. Still to come on the programme, Jeremy Hunt has promised an extra £200 million to tackle potholes. He calls them a curse. He's absolutely right. But will that go far enough? At 7:45, we'll ask Mr Pothole himself.
OK, and there is a Mr Pothole. Day 3 of the Cheltenham Festival gets underway today. 8:20. We will ask a horse training expert how to pick yourself a winner.
You just go for the pretty outfits.
OK.
Or the best-looking horse.
Yeah, but you have to have very sort of thick underwear. I mean, whatever they're not wearing up top, they're wearing...
What, the jockeys?
No, the women around the place and the men.
No, I was talking, I choose my
You
horse
can't go out in your
based on what the
flimsies.
jockeys
You know,
are.
you've got to have thick thermals on.
Indeed.
Because that wind gets you to
Yeah.
all sorts of
Well,
places.
to quote a man greater than me, play that sting.
Yeah. Let's go through the back pages today. The Mail featuring football, Liverpool's Champions League clash. Aggregate score 6-2, they went down against Real Madrid. They lost 1-0 last night. The Eye references Jurgen Klopp's comments that Liverpool face a massive task to be back in the Champions League when you look at the Premier League position. And the Star leads with the latest in the Qataris' attempted takeover of Manchester United after members of their team and their legal team arrived in England for further talks. OK, Paul Coyte with more. Where do you want to begin, Paul?
Well, I tell you what, interestingly though, just with that last story that you mentioned, the Qataris and the fact the takeover possibly at Manchester United, and we'd mentioned that the rule is with UEFA that you're only allowed to own one club.
Yes. So,
it's not.
So they would have Paris Saint-Germain, for instance, or say they own Man United. These two teams together in the Champions League would prove a breach of the rules, really.
Correct. Interestingly, UEFA are having meetings about whether it's possible to change that.
Money talks.
Money talks.
Money talks.
As we will find out with FIFA a little bit later as well. We should mention last night, shouldn't we? Real Madrid.
A few matches.
Real Madrid, I mean, I don't think any Liverpool fan would disagree. They were completely outclassed again yesterday. It certainly wasn't 5 goals, but Real Madrid is so good. Too much of a task to go over to the Bernabeu and get a result, but and also the papers again. They're saying the word whimper is being used a lot. Out with a whimper, and it's pretty much how it was.
Well, they went out 1-0 down. You know, I think they'd be happy enough for that.
I think so. To walk away, it could have been much worse.
Right, let's look at the Premier League last night.
Brighton, Brighton beat Crystal Palace. Now Brighton, they're pushing for... I mean, we're talking about pushing for Europe.
Incredible.
They're actually pushing for Champions League. So Brighton, and whereas Crystal Palace under Patrick Vieira, completely the other way. They really are doing bad. They can't buy a goal. Now, this is an interesting fact that happened yesterday. Solly March scored for Brighton yesterday in the 15th minute, which you may not think is any big deal, but when you look at the team score and underneath, it says March 15. Which was the day yesterday.
No, get out of it.
How about that? I knew you'd like that.
Do you know there's that play on in London, that Ghost Story 222?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen this number on buses. I've woken up at 2:22 in the morning.
Oh, no.
What is that saying?
I don't know.
Do you think I'm obsessed or possessed? Or...
I think you're obsessed and possessed.
Yeah, both of those things. There's European action tonight as well. We've got Real Betis taking on Man United. They're on a loser. They're 4-1 down.
4-1. There's not going to be any problem.
The Arsenal game's going to be quite close, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's 2-2 because Sporting Lisbon or Sporting Club, as they like to call themselves, that's on a knife edge. But if you're Arsenal, what do you do? This is the thing. If you're Mikel Arteta, obviously you stand a great chance of going quite far in the competition, but bigger fish to fry. They're going for the Premier League. They're 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League. You don't want any distractions because that's the big prize. So it's probably going to be good for players like Gabriel Jesus, who's coming back, so it gives him a run out. But do you go for it? Do you actually attempt to try and win the competition? Obviously, you're going to try and win every game you can, but the Premier League is going to be the priority at the moment.
Well, the Hammers are looking good. West Ham at home to AEK Larnaca.
Yep, Cyprus.
2-0 up.
2-0 up. So, again, they're at the other end of the table. They're looking bad. They've got a huge fight against relegation. And there's a strange distraction as well for them in the Europa League. But European football always seems to be the thing that everybody strives for. But once they're in it, it's like, well, we don't want to ruin our chance of getting European football for next year, but you're actually playing in it at the moment, if you see what I mean. So it's all a bit strange.
Here, you were going to tell me this story about Alan Mullery.
Yes.
And how he is detested by Brighton fans?
No,
the other
Crystal
way around.
Palace. Because Brighton played Crystal Palace last night. So there's a rivalry between them. You can't really call it a local rivalry because it's such a long distance between South London and Brighton. But the actual rivalry began back in the 70s. And it really is a real rivalry. And it's between Terry Venables and Alan Mullery. Now, both at the time, back in the 60s, were playing for Spurs, and then they were both vying to become the captain. Alan Mullery got the job, and Venables wasn't too happy about it, so there was a little rivalry between the two of them. So then you've got Alan Mullery in the 70s becomes the Brighton manager, and Terry Venables is the Crystal Palace manager. Now, Again, a little bit of tension between them, but what happened during one game, and this is where this rivalry that's grown out of proportion, is that a fan for Crystal Palace threw a cup of coffee and it landed on Alan Mullery's very nice sheepskin coat, as all managers wore on that day. Anyway, he looked at it and, you know, and the guy was leering over and he, anyway, took change out of his pocket and said, "This is all your club's worth." Threw a few bit of change on the floor. And from that moment, it just went like this. So there are fans now at Crystal Palace, and interestingly, Alan Mullery became a Crystal Palace manager years later. And fans will go, "We can't stand Mullery, we can't stand." And you say, "Well, why?" Don't know. But it's because of that moment. And that is why the rivalry is so strong between the two teams.
Wow, well, now you know, you learned it here.
Yeah.
The FIFA Congress, the 73rd FIFA Congress, the world governing body, it's been held in Rwanda as we speak.
It is being held in Rwanda as we speak, and it started early this morning. There we are. There's everybody's going to be speaking there. I think the most important thing that will be happening at the Congress is the election of the FIFA president. I could say an election of a new FIFA president, which is not going to be the case. 211 national federations, they meet to discuss basically making more money, or should I say growing the game, whereas Gianni Infantino will be there unopposed. He is the only person that is up for election at all. So everybody votes for him, and then he waves and everybody applauds, although there are a couple of countries that are actually saying they don't support him, so their protest will be not applauding him when he stands there and takes all the adulation.
And will they be looking back at the Qatari World Cup? Will there be any questions to face about that?
Whether the questions will be faced, I don't know, because questions will come from the press, not within FIFA, because he owns so many of the people that are there. It's all about what they can get, different federations, what he can do for their federations. It's purely political, Eamonn. It's not about football.
Infantino is the incumbent president and he's facing little or no opposition.
Zero opposition.
Okay.
Zero opposition. 12 years.
A bit like you. Who could take on this job?
I'd give it a go, but I just don't think I'd stand a chance again.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your job.
Oh, nobody would.
See, nobody. That's
maybe Mullery.
Unassailable. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Paul Coit. There, the time 25 to 8. Please do stay with us, and we're going to be having a look at Michael Caine's star-studded 90th birthday bash. Tom Cruise was there. Freddie Gray wasn't there. And there was Emma Burnell, but they're here with the newspapers to have their say on it after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The front pages are all budget, budget, budget. Let's have a look. Daily Mail, first of all.
It's leading with the 6 million people caught up in the Chancellor's £120 billion so-called stealth tax raid. They ask, is it enough to turn the tide?
Here's the Times. It says the Chancellor's budget leaves the UK with the biggest tax burden since the Second World War.
The Sun goes with tanks a lot, focusing on the drivers who'll save £100 a year on fuel.
And the Telegraph reports Bank of England held emergency talks after shares in Credit Suisse plummeted. They also feature a photograph of the Queen Consort who attended Ladies' Day at Cheltenham with a big furry hat. Now, you're going to Cheltenham today. Will you be wearing a big furry hat?
No.
What are you going to do to protect yourself with the cold and the wind and the rain?
Trilby.
Oh.
With some feathers in it.
Do you wear a pin through that to keep it on your head?
No, I should do. It's a good thought. Maybe I just won't go outside.
Yeah.
That's the plan. Anyway, we are
joined... What would you do if you stayed inside? What would you do? You'd just be forced to drink all day. That would be terrible for you, wouldn't it?
I will study the form.
I
will study the form and I will make conversation. Right, Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and the political consultant, Emma Burnell, here to go through the papers. We're just one quick word from both of you on the budget, the front of the papers, before we move on. What did you think?
I thought it was dull, which is what they wanted me to think. I don't think it was enough to change the political weather, but I think it probably stabled the markets, which ultimately is probably where they knew they were going to land.
Freddie?
Boring as well, I agree. Minimalist. The welfare reforms, the attempt to get people back into work, mothers, the older people back into work are perhaps welcome, but the government has not addressed the 5.3 million working-age people who are on benefits, out-of-work benefits. That sort of hides our official unemployment. Our official unemployment suggests we have relatively low unemployment. Actually, the figure's much higher. That's a serious problem.
Could that actually increase after the budget with some of these measures to encourage people back into work with some form of benefit?
Well, yes. I mean, there's no measures to address the working-age people. Mental health, since the pandemic, number of people on mental health benefits has increased dramatically. We have something like 12% of our working-age population now is on benefits, and that is partly the reason why we have such a high tax burden. It's extremely expensive. It's a major problem that Labour are actually better on than the Tories now, which is saying something.
Interesting.
In the Mail, the race to retrieve the American drone that was downed by 2 Russian jets in the Black Sea. What's going on, Emma?
So a Russian fighter jet clipped, we think deliberately, an American drone that was doing surveillance largely around sort of the manoeuvres around Ukraine. The thing fell into the Crimean Sea, and there is now... the Russians are trying to recover it. The Americans are sort of trying to recover it whilst playing down any sense that it might be able to give any sensitive information to the Russians. So this is largely a publicity thing for the Russians. They get to say, we downed an American drone, we're in charge. It's very macho posturing again. But it's the actual technology and hardware. It doesn't seem from this story that the Russians were able to learn a lot from it, because it's set up to kind of self-destruct all the information. The information is stored off drone, as it were. So there isn't anything in there that should give the Russians any new intelligence or understanding of what the Americans are doing.
It's like Mission Impossible. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
It's very much a forerunner of the drone.
The hunt for the Predator drone is on.
The new movie in there.
Here's an interesting thing, Freddie. We stay with the Mail, and it's about Gary Lineker, and he's still tweeting.
I'm so glad you've chosen this.
You want love one?
No, sorry, carry on.
There's a politicalisation of this, but basically, you sort of think, well, what's he done wrong here? He's saying that big game, like taking the heads of elephants or tigers or leopards or whatever, is wrong, and he wants a blanket ban in the UK importing or allowing these things into the country. So who's objecting?
Well, this sticks in my craw because I'm going to say poor Gary Lineker on this, and I really don't like Gary Lineker. I know we talked about this, I know you're a fan. Because he's just signed this letter about a bill banning the imports of pelts and big game hunting trophies back into the UK. It's quite a popular bill in this country. African countries object to it, and so they've written a letter, not singling out Gary, but the Mail, because of the fact that Gary's been in the news so much, the Mail has singled him out. They're saying that it's sort of virtue signalling, and that actually big game hunting plays an important part in the African economy, and the fact that governments are so against, Western governments are so against it, they don't understand how it works in Africa, how it actually can be used to sustain the environment. Deborah Meaden has taken the other point of view. She says, we do not understand how hunting works in Africa, and we need to be a bit more sensitive in the way we talk about it.
I've interviewed a leader on this in this country, Amy Dickinson. I think she's assigned at Cambridge or Oxford University, and all conservationists in this country actually disagree with Lineker and all the celebrities who are signing up to this, because they say that it's so important to sustain, however abhorrent it is, to see these animals being killed. They are the ones that use these bushy scrublands where you wouldn't get the tourists that sustain conservation areas, and without that, the whole of conservation parks would close altogether.
But that is as nothing to the power of a tweet with a picture of a horrible picture of a dead animal, and someone is saying this is disgusting.
And not just dead animals, some of them the most majestic dead animals. There were these leaders of the
those
packs,
would all be gone without
these. Documentary about a lion pack that on the BBC ran for 6 weeks or so, whatever. But maybe you're right, we don't understand it. But
I think
right is right and wrong is wrong. I still think it's wrong to kill murder such a majestic beast.
But the argument is that all of those beasts would be gone because actually tourism doesn't sustain the tracts of land that they need. And these are the scientists that know far more about it than I do.
I mean, I'm sure you're absolutely right in terms of the way these economies are currently set up. It cannot be beyond the wit of man to conserve this land without, as Eamonn says. For me, I don't know what the right answer is right now. I don't think we can impose conservation laws on Africa.
You cannot encourage people to go out for fun.
But that's,
shoot,
I mean, it just
murder.
for me, the abhorrence of it. It's not so much the African governments I judge, it's the people who find that a pleasurable
that is strange.
thing
I
to
can't
do.
understand that.
I just, it's beyond me.
Emma, Guardian, the government's expected to ban the use of TikTok on official phones.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Matt Hancock. I'm sorry.
So what do they have? They have these official phones, and they're all whatever they're doing with TikTok.
I mean, if you're like me, I've had jobs where I'm supposed to have had 2 phones, never bothered, because one phone is plenty enough. So they've got this one official phone, but they're downloading all of their apps, their little games that they play, and their TikToks and their Twitters. And TikTok is worrying as an app because it's basically owned by a company that is essentially in with the Chinese government, has a big open back door as we understand it. We are not the first to be considering banning this. The US and Europe have already gone in this direction. So but it is quite a reversal, because about 2 weeks ago, the government were indicating they were quite relaxed about TikTok. And TikTok, there are 2 cabinet ministers who frequently put out videos on TikTok. So it's an interesting move away from that. I mean, the bigger worry is that we have much more complex industrial relations with China. Banning TikTok's not the end or the be-all, but it does possibly signal
they think there's spyware associated, or there could be, with TikTok. So they're saying, right, if you want to put it on your personal phone, that's up to you. But you cannot have an official civil servant phone that they can have access to, or could have access.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And it is crazy, in fact, I think, that government ministers have TikTok on their phones at all. I mean, it is spyware. I think it's effectively been established as spyware. ByteDance tried to, which is the company that, the sort of company that China owns TikTok through, have tried to deny that it is, but the fact is the information is being relayed back to China, and the CCP, the Communist Party that rules China, can look at that information at any time. So it is spyware. And then also an interesting point to make is that TikTok is not allowed in China.
Is it not?
No, they have.
Why would that be?
Because they
spy on themselves.
Because it is a tool to deprave and depress the West.
Oh, interesting.
And Douyin is the one they use in China, which is a much more calm and less distracting and attention deficit reducing, increasing.
Gosh, fascinating. Freddie, can we finish on Swipe Right in the Star? This makes me laugh.
Right. This is a headline of the day for me. Swipe Right is a dating app for far-right conspiracy theorists, because they need love too.
I mean, it brings a whole new meaning to the term hard right, doesn't it? I mean...
They find it hard to find normal feet.
As someone who is frequently on the normal dating apps, I say normal, none of them are normal, it would be delightful if some of the people who send me messages with that kind of content were hived off elsewhere. So go for your lives, lads. Go off to your hard right.
I would like to add, if I may, that Jacob Chauncey, the man, the picture they've used,
QAnon.
The QAnon shaman, he should not be in jail.
Why?
Well, the footage that emerged last week shows that he was escorted into the Capitol and around the Capitol by police officers. He wasn't aware that he was doing anything wrong. When he got into the chamber, he said a prayer. He said a prayer for the Capitol Hill Police and thanked them for showing them around the Capitol. He then went on a loudspeaker and said, "We should go home now. This is getting out of hand." He's in jail for 4 years.
Dear God.
But he's the face.
He's the face
of the what do you call it? Riot.
Just because he's dressed ridiculously. You don't have to go to jail for being dressed.
But sometimes justice has to be done because it has to be seen to be done, doesn't it? And maybe he just needs to be made. He's been made an example.
The footage that Freddie is talking about is selective and not what the jury that convicted him. That they saw a lot of other evidence.
No.
I think it's worth saying that a process has been followed.
His lawyers asked to see the footage that only just came out during his trial,
well,
and they were not
he'll get
allowed
an
to see it.
appeal.
Well, he's wearing a buffalo head. That makes him guilty in my eyes, then.
My wife would swipe left or right. Which one's the approving one?
Left.
Right.
She thinks he's rather handsome.
Well, I'm going to swipe you two left. They're back in 40 minutes' time. Back to the budget now. The Chancellor promised a £200 million increase to the government's potholes fund, bringing that to a total of £700 million.
But is this enough to fix the problem? Joining us now is Mr. Pothole, Mark Morrell. Good morning to you, Mark. What do you think?
Good morning. It's only half of what they cut from this year's road maintenance budget, £400 million. And with the cost of living and the cost of materials and labour and fuel, it's not going to do anything at all, really.
What's going on at the minute? Because everywhere I go, every road I try to take, there's a hole being dug in it, or they're trying to fill in. There's road maintenance going on everywhere. Is that a budgetary thing? What's going on?
No, it's decades of underinvestment. There's a massive road maintenance budget backlog, reported at just about £12 billion as we speak. Next Tuesday, that report comes out, and I can guarantee from my inquiries and sources that will increase. So this time next week, it won't be 12, it could be 13, could be 14 billion pounds. Government just aren't getting hold of the core problem. Repairing potholes wastes money. We need to resurface our roads like other countries. We need a long-term investment plan. They throw bits of money at it, lots of money to me and you, but just to give it in context, in one of the papers I read this morning. It's just £200,000 to do one junction in Staffordshire because of the deterioration. So unless they actually invest annually, and I believe they need to put in about £3 billion a year every year, then in 10 years' time we could have 95% of the potholes gone.
But you're obviously covering more area by filling in potholes as opposed to resurfacing a road, which means the budget wouldn't go as far.
Yeah, I mean, it needs more money, but they're pulling in excess of £50 billion a year from road users through fuel duty, VAT, fuel excise duty, VAT, and of course they get VAT returns every time you damage your tyre or suspension on your vehicle and costs. There was a report done some years ago that it was costing the UK economy £5 billion a year as a result of badly maintained roads. Well, now 10 years plus the cost of increase in deterioration, that's probably costing nearly double to the economy. So I cannot understand from an economic model why they can't actually invest to save money in the long term. I mean, we're 37th in the world in the standard and quality of our roads for a G7 nation. Is that really good enough?
So, Mark, do you think there's a bit of politicking going on here, that they've got the eye of the local elections coming up, they want the headlines, they want to be seen to be doing something and you hope that it does well for them?
Exactly. And they're all regurgitating figures, including the 500 million. So it looks really well. You know, I'm seeing some counties saying they're getting £6 million for potholes. Well, the additional amount is obviously significantly less, but it looks good to put out as an MP trying to support those things. But, you know, next week will prove, just to show the problem that we've got. I mean, government will come back and say we're investing £1 billion a year. But that £1 billion a year is not doing anything. If you keep spending the same money, wasting it, that's madness. They need to grasp it. I mean, it can be done. And they've got plenty of money down the money tree when they needed it throughout the pandemic. Wasted billions and billions of pounds that can make a massive difference.
But Mark, let me just ask you finally and briefly, if you could just make this very, very short, is the situation, are holes in the road at the worst they've ever been?
Yes, and I believe it's getting to the point where councils can't meet their legal obligations going forward.
OK.
Gosh.
Thank you, Mark Morrell. Depressing news there. 200 million extra in the budget towards repairing potholes. Mr. Pothole says not enough. Coming up, we'll have more on the Chancellor's spring budget as the tax burden climbs to its highest point since World War II.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hello, I'm Michael Portillo. You can join me every Sunday on GB News. Remember to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel and to download the GB News app to stay up to date with the latest GB News content. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The Chancellor unveils his £21 billion plan for growth as the country avoids recession.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Thursday the 16th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Good to have you on board, leading the news this morning.
Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up, the declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Jeremy Hunt delivering a defiant spring budget as he faces criticism from both Labour and the Conservatives over proposals that will see 6 million people pay higher taxes.
Well, it comes amid better than expected forecasts, with inflation predicted to plummet to under 3% by the end of the year, and the UK will avoid recession in 2023. Coming up in this hour, we'll be asking Jacob Rees-Mogg what he makes of the budget.
Bank Credit Suisse announced it will take a $50 billion loan from the Swiss Central Bank after its share price plummeted. The drop wiped billions from the stock market, prompting the Bank of England to hold emergency talks overnight to assess the risk to the British economy.
And he's the former apprentice candidate who's out and about on the streets of London for us this morning. Tom Skin is hearing from market traders and small business owners as they react to the Chancellor's budget.
Cheltenham Festival continues. We'll meet the horse trainer who shares his top tips to picking out a winner.
And we love to hear from you throughout the programme. Do get in touch the usual ways via Twitter or email. Lots of you have been doing so far. Graham says, spare a thought for the self-employed with personal pensions. Mine lost 5% last year, and with the recent financial uncertainty. And Corin says, I don't think giving 30 hours free child will encourage people to work more hours, especially if it affects their benefits. I think it will be used to have a break from children. Well, you have to put in a minimum number of hours of work, I think 16 hours, so it can't just be a break from children.
I thought there would be some sort of pun headline linking Jeremy Hunt to the Cheltenham Festival, being the top national hunt meeting of the season. But
you got the Metro there. There was some sort of... He was talking about his 4 E's yesterday, and there was lots of questions about whether there'd be jokes about him and his 4 E's. The easy does it budget, there you go, they played on that. There's a few fun headlines on them.
What's that got to do with the national hunt?
Sorry, no, I was just talking about headlines. Headlines and the budget.
Cheltenham Best.
Well, you were talking about the...
I was...
Oh, sorry, I thought you... Well. The hunt, the national hunt. I got confused with Jeremy Hunt. Easily done.
Anyway, if you can make up a Jeremy Hunt and Cheltenham headline and have it interlinked, please let us have it. The top story this morning is that the Chancellor has delivered that spring budget. Tax breaks, work incentives form the core of his plan for growth.
We tackle the 2 biggest barriers that stop businesses growing: investment incentives and labour supply. The best investment incentives in Europe, the biggest ever employment package, for disabled people more help, for older people barriers removed, for families feeling the pinch, fuel duty frozen, beer duty cut, energy bills capped, and for parents 30 hours of free childcare for all under 5s. Today we build for the future, with inflation down, debt falling and growth up. The declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Well, Jeremy Hunt also revealed that inflation is set to plummet to below 3% by the end of the year, and the UK would avoid recession.
So earlier today we heard from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Glen. He said the growth in the economy wasn't as high as he would have liked, but he was feeling encouraged.
My job is to focus on making the right decisions, supporting the Chancellor and doing the best I can to get the economy in the best shape so that we can grow, get us out of the situation we're in with respect to growth. It's not as high as I would like, but there's lots of encouragement from the OBR in the fact that we are not going to be in a recession this year. Inflation is down. And obviously the interventions we've made are designed to expand the labour market, encourage businesses to invest so that we can grow the economy faster and provide us more choices and hopefully get that tax burden down.
OK, he was the man from the Treasury there, the man from our digital news. Dan Falvey joins us in the studio. What do you think of what you heard?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because what we saw last year when the mini-budget was done by Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss, it was all about going for growth. And we saw how the markets reacted to that mini-budget, and that obviously led to Kwasi Kwarteng being pushed out and then the downfall of Liz Truss.
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak came in and said, we're going to have to go about things differently. And yet, if you listen to the rhetoric of Jeremy Hunt yesterday, you would have thought that Liz Truss was still in charge. It was all about this budget for growth. It was very much trying to play to those Tory backbenchers and say, actually, we get that this is what you want and this is what we're going to try and go for. That said, backbenchers don't think it actually went anywhere near far enough. So, you know, they don't think there were the tax cuts. They're very frustrated this corporation tax increase is still going ahead. So there's a lot of rhetoric to try and package this up as a Conservative budget, and that's not quite how Conservative backbenchers see this.
And we've got Jacob Rees-Mogg coming on to the programme to give us his take, but he, and I quote yesterday, called the current approach to policy making phantasmagoria. No idea what that means, but we'll be finding out from him a little bit later. Apparently that's a bad thing. But in terms of the childcare policies, I mean, you talk about, it sounds like a sort of Truss budget, and this was something she was really hot on as well. Quite progressive.
Yeah, I think what the government has realised is just how much we need to get people back into work to help get the economy going. So we saw lots of things, whether it be around childcare, this progressive policy to try and make sure that those people who are staying at home to look after children can go to work. Whether it was also that we saw the pension reforms, getting rid of the pensions allowance cap to try to keep people who are maybe coming towards the end of their career and thinking, you know what, I've maxed out on my pension, I might as well just retire, get them to make sure they stay in the workplace. So it was about trying to remove those constraints and make sure that we can actually get those who want to work still working.
It's interesting, the backlash that Liz Truss faced when she tried to change the top rate of tax was huge, wasn't it? And yet this is the Guardian's calling it the help for the 1%. You know, effectively it is helping the richest in society, this particular policy, not getting anywhere near the same amount of criticism.
No, and it's funny that because this also was another shock, a bit like how when Liz Truss got rid of the top-rated tax, that was unexpected. I don't think anyone thought that this was going to come. There was a lot of calls for there to be a reduction in the tax, but I don't think anyone thought that the cap was going to be removed completely. So, again, it seems to be taking the Liz Truss tactics and just repackaging them in a slightly different way to try and make them more appealing to the mass market.
OK, Dan, appreciate that. Dan's our head of digital news, and if people want to make a comment about anything or talk about how the budget has impacted on them or not, how do they get in touch with you?
We'd always tell people to get in touch via the newsway at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Good lad. Thank you very much indeed. Now, as part of this budget, early years education in England will be expanded to cover parents with children as young as 9 months.
Well, earlier we spoke to Jules Robinson, a nursery principal, who said that the government support was welcome, but it was still a fraction of what is needed for the sector.
It is a great step, and we do welcome it, I think, across the sector. I think it's worth pointing out that as a sector, the Early Years Alliance have estimated that there is currently a 1.7 billion shortfall in the funding. There is that gap. So Mr Hunt has thrown us a bone of 240 million, and it's hugely welcome, but it still actually covers less than half of the cost of childcare. So it is a great thing that the government have done yesterday, and it's a wonderful step, but it is just one step.
And to tell us more, founder of the parental support organisation, Pregnant Then Screwed, Jolie Brearley, with this. Jolie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. As I understand it, a few months ago, you sent a letter to Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. That was in February, actually. And basically, do you think they have listened to you?
And we are elated by the announcement yesterday. It was far more than we had expected. And this will make a significant difference to parents and enable them to be able to work if they want to. However, it's going to take a while for it to implement, so it's not going to have any immediate effect on parents that are really struggling right now. And there are questions, as your previous guest said, in terms of the capacity in order to deliver this, because nurseries have been closing their doors in droves and we cannot recruit staff into the childcare sector. So there is very big questions about whether we're going to increase demand, but whether the supply is going to be there. However, I mean, this is a real milestone in the way childcare is being talked about. They've now accepted that it is critical infrastructure for the economy, and that without it, many mothers in particular are unable to work. So we are really, really pleased to see this step.
You know, that really women were having to pay, mostly women in this case, having to pay to go back to work was an outrageous scenario. Many women just choosing to drop out of the workforce altogether as a result of this. So far behind many other European countries on this. But as you say, there could be problems in implementing it. What lessons can be learnt then from those other countries that have already addressed this? Because there are issues with perhaps ratios. We're talking of children as young as 9. You can't reduce the ratio, 9 months. You can't reduce the ratios in the way that the Chancellor was describing at the dispatch box yesterday, can you?
So our understanding in terms of what they're doing with ratios is it's just for 2-year-olds. So it's to follow what Scotland do at the moment. And so it's increasing the number of staff that children look after at the age of 2 from 4 to 5 children. We were very much against this. We campaigned hard for this not to happen, and the reason we campaigned hard is because there's actually no evidence that it will decrease costs, but there's plenty of evidence that it will decrease quality. I mean, I personally can't imagine having to look after 5 2-year-olds in a room. I think it would be enormously stressful. And what do you do if one of them needs a toilet, or one of them gets sick, or there's lots of questions about the safety of children, the health of children, and also the quality of the provision that you're going to deliver if you're going to be looking after that many children at the same time, as well as it putting extra pressure on the workforce without increasing their salaries. So we did not agree with that amendment, and I had a very frank conversation with Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, about that. So that was the downside, and also the amount of funding that was given was not what it should be.
Well, there's a number of things you talk about there increasing, and one of the things that the Chancellor said he was worried about was demand for this type of care provision increasing as well. In fact, that it would be so popular, so needed, that so many people would go for it. So what he's going to do is stagger it out. What I'm really saying is that it's a lot of jam round the mouth and very little in it, isn't it?
All fur coat and no knickers is my favourite phrase, Eamonn, on that. Yeah, I mean, we've received many messages today from really frustrated parents who are really struggling right now. You know, the average cost for a childcare place is £15,000 a year. It's £19,000 in London. That is completely unaffordable for the majority of families. And we're right in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So people are desperate for some level of support immediately, and we're not going to see anything for at least a year. And actually, the majority of it will be after the general election. So who will actually be implementing this is a big question. What we're really happy about is that the narrative has now changed. This is absolutely a new way of talking about childcare, and the only way is up. You know, Labour have to beat this now if they want to keep this as their flagship policy.
You know, what about people who perhaps are new to this debate? I mean, you know, working mothers are so familiar with it, we understand the concept, but someone who may not have thought about this before yesterday might say, hang on a minute, why should we be paying for people, for women, you know, to not look after their own kids? What do you say to that argument?
Yeah, I mean, we hear this a lot. If you look at what Canada just did, they invested $30 billion in their childcare sector, and they did it because they found that for every dollar they invested, they got between $1.50 and $2.80 back into the wider economy. Australia did it. They found that for every dollar they invested, they got $2 back. We currently have 1.7 million women who are working fewer hours than they want to because of childcare costs. The Centre for Progressive Policy estimates that if we could enable those women to work the hours they want to, it would have an economic benefit of £28 billion. This is an investment in the economy, and every other country is doing this because they've got the memo. They understand that it is critical infrastructure for their economy. We're way behind, embarrassingly so. And so I think we just need to follow other countries and look at the evidence that shows that this really is not only an investment in the economy, it's an investment in children, it's an investment in women's equality.
OK. Well, you keep biting their ankles, Jolie. Very good talking to you. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. The time, 40 minutes past 8.
This week, the Queen Consort met a viral sensation who's set now to become a Disney star.
She was visiting Elmhurst Ballet School, that's in Birmingham, to mark their centenary, and she met a scholarship student who started on his journey on the rainy streets of Nigeria.
Our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, takes up the story.
Springing back into action. Elmhurst Ballet School, now 100 years old, teaches the next generation of pirouetting performers. Their royal patron, the Queen Consort, was here this week celebrating the ballet school's centenary, a month late due to COVID.
She said to me there was absolutely no way that I wasn't coming, and she was really apologetic. She was like, I'm so sorry, but we absolutely were committed to coming. And I was like, well, you've shown that you are, because you're here.
Jessica Ward is the principal of Elmhurst and is grateful for Camilla's years of commitment.
Her Majesty is very supportive, and it's really about kind of advocating for the school, helping us build our school community, celebrate it. I think the other really beautiful thing about our relationship is she's really interested in the people.
Elmhurst students come from far and wide. Anthony Maidu from Nigeria became a viral sensation when a video of him dancing on the rainy streets of Lagos was watched more than 16 million times. His story is now being made into a Disney documentary, following Anthony's journey from Africa to winning an Elmhurst scholarship and pursuing a ballet career.
Hello.
The Queen Consort met Anthony, who wants to inspire other young people to pursue their dreams, whatever their background.
It was such an honour to meet her because loads of kids around the world don't have the same opportunity that I do. I just want to let them know that whatever they want to do, they should stick to it and never give up.
During the visit, the Queen Consort was entertained by students on the stage. Sophie Walters is from Australia and performed in 2 of the numbers.
People back home, they're really supportive of the royal family and the Commonwealth, obviously, and to tell them that I've performed on the other side of the world for Her Majesty, they'll just be blown away.
In a speech, the Queen Consort praised the skillful students and told them she herself was familiar with ballet shoes. Her Majesty revealed she'd joined Silver Swans classes for elderly ballet dancers. Camilla may not have performed on the stage, but it's not long until the global spotlight is on her and her husband, the King, when they are crowned in Westminster Abbey in less than 8 weeks' time. Cameron Walker, GB News, Birmingham.
Well, see, I find all that fascinating, all that elderly ballet dancer business and holding on to poles and balancing yourself. Because part of my rehabilitation, I go to this gym, which they teach you to do certain exercises. Everything's harder with your eyes closed.
Yeah, really hard to stand on one foot, for example.
Stand on one foot, which I'm expected to do. And then you see a number of things I'm doing here to try and give myself that sort of balance back. Now, I'm being held in this harness here. I couldn't do that without the use of the harness. And then the harness builds up to a certain speed. And basically, it's like muscle memory. It makes you remember what your feet used to do. The boxing thing there, really difficult, because when you swing, you go off balance, you know?
Yeah.
You go off balance. Maybe I need to do the boxing in a
so
harness
much
as well.
About confidence as well, because you had that fall, horrible fall, and had
It's like
the
PTSD
surgery.
having
Yeah, well, you just don't want to be going through that
That's
again.
me with my eyes closed. That's me, and what you don't see is I'm on one foot there with that, because you've got to reawaken.
Blue steel to all of us.
Yeah, you've got to reawaken those nerve paths to say, look, this is what you do, fire these up, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But
well, look, I think it's amazing. No one can say you're not trying, doing everything possible to get, you know.
If I was a horse, I'd be in very good condition for Cheltenham. We're going to talk about that very shortly. 18 minutes. Or actually, it's coming up to 19 minutes now, past 8.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. Commuters face another round of rail strikes today as members of the RMT at 14 operators walk out again over paying conditions. Passengers are being warned to expect disruption with the services that are running starting later and finishing much earlier than usual.
A man and a woman arrested in connection with the attempted murder of a senior detective in Northern Ireland have been released. John Caldwell was shot at a sports complex in Omagh, County Tyrone last month after coaching a youth football team. A number of other arrests have been made, but all the suspects were released following questioning.
Filming of the Netflix show The Crown is taking place in the Scottish town where the Prince of Wales met his now wife. This series will feature William's time at the University of St Andrews, where, of course, we'll know he met Kate Middleton in 2001.
Well, we are going to the Cheltenham Festival after
races.
this. Yeah, we're going to the races, and we're going to ask a horse training expert what to look out for when you are trying to pick a winner.
And how to spot an underdog. That's what I like. That's up next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Very nice to see you again. What have you been eating this morning or having this morning? I've just had a little punnet of fruit.
It was very lovely and very ripe, which is key. Juicy. Anyway, still to come on the programme this morning at 8:45, we have Jacob Rees-Mogg in the studio with us. He'll give us his take on the budget. He thinks that the tax burden is climbing to its highest level since the Second World War and isn't impressed.
And after the Queen Consort enjoyed Ladies' Day at Cheltenham yesterday, and she was beautifully dressed and she had a big furry hat on.
And a brooch from the late Queen.
Yeah. And those ladies all look lovely, look very, very nice. At 9:15, we will ask if the festival will ever be the same again without its strict dress code. Now, I think we could have found more outrageous pictures than the ones that we had there. Those ladies all beautifully dressed.
To be honest, I think the truth is no one's been taking the advantage of the relaxation in a sort of flagrant way. It's just people still enjoyed getting dressed up, I think, for the races.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a fair point. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News or send us pictures, particularly if you've dressed in an inappropriate way. People are interested. People are interested.
Are they?
Have you thought out your whole dress regalia today? Yeah.
I'm wearing Lisa Redmond, a designer, and same as I wore last year, same designer. I've gone pastels rather than hunting green, which a lot of people tend to do at big hunt race, and I'm excited.
That's good.
Okay.
I hope the weather's good.
So do I. Always is rubbish when I go.
It doesn't splash on you. Festival continues today, so it started Tuesday, Wednesday, today's Thursday, day 3.
Actually, do you know what they're doing today? They're celebrating St Patrick's Day today because it's Gold Cup Day tomorrow and they don't want the paddy celebrations to interrupt. So it's St Patrick's Day today as far as Cheltenham's concerned.
Bubble out of it, so they are. Yeah. Right, OK. So, anyway, what is happening today? The historic Stairs hurdle race is there. So many horses to pick from and the odds to get your heads around. We thought the best way to bet safe, but maybe win big. With us now is the renowned horse training expert. We say good morning to Trevor Breen. Trevor, hello there.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Very good, Trevor. Who's your friend?
This is my best horse called Highland President, or Archie, as we call him at home.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Is he a bit like? Have you seen the Banshees of Inisharan yet? Have you?
I haven't actually, but I've heard it's excellent. I'm looking to go and see it.
It is excellent, Trevor. And what happens is Colin Farrell, he has a donkey in it. It's a miniature donkey, but the donkey lives in the house, so it does. So I'm just... So it might be something you may want to look into in the future to keep your horsey happy.
No, this horse is not living in the house. This horse is, you know, top draw. You've probably been out on the gallops already this morning, have you?
Yeah, he's been out. He's actually just back from Doha in Qatar. We did the Global Champions Tour last week, so he's just enjoying a week's downtime for a minute. But he's had a good stretch this morning and back to work next week.
Of course, that's incredible. Look at that. There's a kiss and everything. How do horses travel? And don't tell me in an aeroplane. How well do they take the whole travelling business?
To be honest, they actually travel better, I find, on an aeroplane than on a truck. So generally speaking, they travel in a truck, a big 18-ton or 26-ton truck, and we bring them everywhere in mainland Europe that way. But then, obviously, when we used to go, he was in Dubai for January and most of February, and then he flew back to Europe and then back out to Doha to be on the Global Champions Tour. And I find that they travel better by plane nearly than on the truck, to be honest.
Well, look, these horses are severely pampered and, you know, there's nothing people won't do for their racehorses. Today, lots of people will be studying the form. Somebody like me, and I'm going to Cheltenham today, I can't pretend to be an expert. I look for the horse I think looks the nicest, but actually, that might not be entirely stupid. Sometimes you can see the muscles, you can see the condition.
Absolutely. I think there's no substitute for being at the racecourse yourself, you know. And if you are lucky enough to have tickets and get there, I think you should definitely go to the parade ring, have a look at the horses, look at their coats. Generally speaking, the horse with the best bright shining coat and looks $1 million. That generally says that, you know, internally they're feeling $1 million as well. It also says, you know, that the yard is on top of everything and really has the horse in pristine condition. And then on top of that, you can see, you know, which horse is actually coping with the situation. It's like us humans, you know, some people go to a big game and they freeze a little bit in the atmosphere and the environment. So you look for a horse, if a horse is sweating up, you know, and they look all white on their neck, like here, you know, it means they're a bit stressy and worried about the situation. And that's then is you know, it's nervous energy that they should be or could be using in the race that they're wasting in the warm-up or the parade ring. So if you can get a horse that's really looking $1 million, as you say, and really beautiful, bright, shining skin and a coat, and then really relax in the atmosphere, that generally is a good sign, and that horse should run well.
Tell me, have you got carrots concealed on your person or sugar lumps or anything?
Or does your horse just love you?
Yeah, oh. What is that? What is that you have?
Polo mints. So it's just
give the horse a polo.
Trevor, I don't know. I've got a list of races today. I don't know if you're in the position to give us tips or anything like that. Are you?
Well, listen, I think it is a gamble, and that's why it's called that. But I think probably for me, you know, a bit cautiously saying this, but you know, you can't go too far wrong if you just want to win and have a bit of fun on the favourites. In the first race, I think Mighty Potter is a really good bet. He's won the last 4 times he's been out, and I think you need to look at the form, especially if you're not at the racecourse. So yeah, recent form is very important. He's won the last 4. Then in the Ryanair Chase, I think Shishkin, he's trained by Nicky Henderson. Again, he's going to be a favourite, but extremely hard to beat. I think you can't go too far wrong if you back him. And then, like you mentioned, the Paddy Power Stairs Hurdle, that's probably the biggest one today. I've a couple in this. I mean, Home by the Lee, that's trained by Joseph O'Brien. He's won his last 2 times out. And then I know Joseph, he lives not too far from me back in Ireland, and he has a very big hill that he trains on. And as everyone knows in Cheltenham, that big hill up the final stretch to the finish takes its toll on so many horses. So you'd like to think his horses will have would possibly have the advantage there. So that might see him through. And the odds on him, I think he's in around 6-1 this morning. So you have a little bit of a better gamble. And then I suppose if you want the outsider, which I have to probably give, he's an 18-1 chance in the same race. It's called Paisley Park. And he's ridden by a friend of mine called Aidan Coleman, so I think I'm going to have to back Aidan as well.
Good man. We wish Aidan all the luck there. Isabel, her hand's about to fall off. She's writing every word. She's transcribed everything that you've said there.
Well, I hope it's lucky now.
No, I'm just there to look at the pretty ones. I can't deny it. But listen, there's going to be a 6'4" jockey riding today. I don't know if that's ever happened before, or if that's a regular thing, but it sounds unusual to me. Is that harder for a jockey to have that kind of height?
Yeah, I would think it's a disadvantage for definite. I'm quite tall. I'm just under 6 foot. But yeah, I think really for a jump jockey like that, I suppose your average height would be about 5'9", 5'10". It just means that there's going to be more pressure on his legs, and throughout the race and stuff, he's going to have to work a lot harder himself. And obviously, he doesn't want to transfer that stress to the horse, so that means he's going to have to work harder. But I'm sure he's going to do a good job and give his all.
OK, really appreciate talking to you, Trevor, and your friend.
Beautiful,
it's been a beautiful, beautiful horse. Lovely bond you've got between you there. And good luck with all the training that you do as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. What a beautiful horse.
Oh, lovely. That's how, well, little girls dream, really, that your horse is just obsessed with you like that. That's what I always wanted.
Well, I just want to have a woman that's obsessed with me.
Amen.
Why wouldn't anyone?
Well, just have some polo mints in your pocket and see how you go.
See how you get on. Some polo mints there.
Stay with us. We'll be discussing the Sunday scaries. Are they a real thing? According to academics, it is true. We'll be discussing
What
that
do you
with
mean,
Freddie Gray.
being depressed about Monday?
Yeah.
Sunday scaries?
Yeah, Emma Burnell, Freddie Gray with this after that. We'll be back after.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to
to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:37. Time to look at the front pages one last time this morning. The Mail leading with the 6 million workers caught up in an £120 billion stealth tax raid after the Chancellor's budget. Their headline, is it enough to turn the tide?
Here's the Times. It says the Chancellor's budget leaves the UK with the biggest tax burden since the Second World War.
The Sun goes with tanks a lot, focusing on the drivers who'll save £100 a year, fuel in the new budget.
And the Telegraph reports the Bank of England has held emergency talks after shares in Credit Suisse Bank plummeted. They also feature a photograph of the Queen Consort, who attended Ladies' Day at Cheltenham, with a big furry beaver hat on there, and nice complementing colours there, like camel colours there.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's all you had to do, put a big furry hat on, a scarf and a camel coat.
Yes.
Why didn't you?
I might now.
No, you're going to be angst-ridden.
You think I'm the only one interested in Cheltenham. Actually, scribbling notes furiously over here is Freddie Gray. We're also joined by Emma Burnell. Freddie, you've chosen the story in the Times about Cheltenham. There's been lots of talk about fashion, but actually e-scooters have been banned from Cheltenham.
Well, Cheltenham is one of many places in Britain now that has e-scooters. And last year there was quite a lot of concern because, as you probably know, people get very drunk at Cheltenham and then get on these e-scooters.
Yeah, because they can't get taxis and things.
There's terrible transport problems, always, every year. So e-scooters have been suspended to avoid drunken e-scooting going on. Probably a good thing. I just thought maybe it's dangerous. I don't know. Although I'm pro-freedom. I think people should be allowed to e-scoot if they can.
Well, the thing that amazes me is around London, and I'm sure this happens in Birmingham and Leeds and various other places, these Boris-type bikes, right? So I'm driving into work in the morning and I look and I go, there's one dumped there, there's three dumped there, there's two hanging off that bridge. So is there somebody who goes round with a sensor and knows where they are and then collects them?
I mean, the Boris bikes, the old school ones, had to go in and out of an actual rank, and that's how they were. You collected them. But the e-scooters, I think they're just dumped where they're left, and then another person will pick them up and pay their thing.
It's all on an app.
They drive me mad. I mean, you know, as an avid pedestrian and someone who, frankly, should never be allowed anywhere near an e-scooter with my sense of balance, drunk or not. But you're walking around and they're just strewn across the pavement, and you think, you know, there's someone with a buggy, there's someone with a wheelchair. They can't get past that. So I think people...
Why do they have to dump them? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why can't you just sort of leave it gently up against a hedge?
Well, I think sometimes they get blown over by the wind and things like that because they're not in a proper...
Do you think pushed over by hooligans? That happens quite a lot.
They do what?
Because you're supposed to... You are supposed to park them upright and take... With the e-bikes, anyway, take a picture. But then people come along and just push them over. Yeah.
Should they sort of execute people like that, or people who do things like that?
I'd like to live in the Eamonn Holmes Singapore Plus state where they're executed.
The bloke who invaded the capital shouldn't go to jail, but someone who knocks over an e-scooter should be executed.
He didn't invade the capital. If he'd done it on an e-scooter, maybe.
Oh, goodness me. Right, conspiracy theorists on that note. And political marginals attended an event put together by Conservative activists at the Pushkin State Museum in Moscow, showing who Russia's friends abroad are. This is in The Guardian. Emma.
Yeah, I mean, it's a motley old crew. You've got a grandson of Charles de Gaulle, and there's a quote in the story from another grandson of Charles de Gaulle saying he doesn't speak for our family or anyone connected to us. You've got Steven Seagal and a
I met him in Moscow.
Is he as bonkers as he appears
He seems
to be?
be sort of kept in a room or something, and they bring him out every now and again. They bring him to a party and they feed him meat and they put him back in a room again. Not really, honestly, it's very strange.
They love those 80s and 90s action heroes.
Yes.
My favourite of the people who attended was an Italian countess who's also a Tolkien expert who believes that European men are being encouraged or possibly even forced to marry cows. I think she means that literally and not in the pejorative sense. So, I mean, what I think this story illustrates is how isolated...
There was an answer to that, but I bit my tongue. Anyway.
How isolated the Russians really are, if that's the people they can get coming to their big Friends of Russia conference.
It's a shame, because there was so much to celebrate about Russian culture and society, and to be a Russophile...
That's what the conference was called, literally.
It is no longer acceptable. And I think probably you could argue you can still be a Russophile without being a Putin apologist.
Yeah, and you should be.
Yeah.
Russia's
Love
an amazing
Tolstoy
country, a great
And
civilization.
a huge country and enormous people of great diversity. You're absolutely right, but in terms of who's going to put their name to being a Russophile right now in the international community, it's the Tolkien lady and Steven Seagal.
If that doesn't strike the fear of God into you, Sunday night may well do, Freddie. From the Times, there is a name, is there, for fear and dread of a Sunday night?
Yes, the Sunday Scaries, I think it's known as. This is more sort of infantilisation of the office place, I think. Companies are being encouraged by academics to try and put on fun activities on Mondays so that staff don't feel so depressed on Sunday nights. I think this is very silly. I remember there was a story a few months ago about companies bringing in puppies to encourage workers to come into the office because they couldn't get them to come in. It's odd. Something odd has happened in the relationship between the employers and employees over the pandemic. And now employers are sort of desperate to get people to come in and try and sort of enjoy the office. If the office is that miserable, they need to, either people need to leave or, maybe they should sack some people.
I do think these stories are so far removed from most workplaces I have any contact with. Certainly, not to say that we don't look after employees here, but we certainly don't, pander to that sort of stuff. And, my husband works in finance. He doesn't hear much of this kind of stuff going on.
I mean,
it's strange.
If your husband works in finance, he probably has things. There are good perks that come with some high flyers. I mean, I know several people who work in finance who have like a masseuse who comes in once a month or something. So there is a productivity question. Happier workers are more productive. But I think that gimmickry is not the way to deal with it. We need to deal with our fundamental attitude to workplace culture.
The most depressing places are these sort of tech or trying to be tech type companies where there's sort of hammocks and night fun, and nobody ever uses the hammock or plays on them. And it feels like a sort of playground that's gone wrong.
Yes, it does. And I've been to a number of these places filming, and there's sleep pods and all sorts of play areas, soft play areas and things. What I think
Gift dispensers.
Well, I suppose what we should really be tackling is getting the scaries on Sunday night, because even if you make Monday pleasant, you still got to go to bed on Monday night. Do you have then the Monday scaries and whatever? And Isabel, you have anxiety. You do, don't you? I mean,
I don't get the Sunday scaries because I genuinely love my job. I have had jobs in the past where I've been depressed.
And you tell fibs as well.
I mean, I've had
you do
jobs...
get worried of an evening.
No, I do, but this is a whole other thing, but I prepare to make sure I don't feel anxious.
That's how you handle it.
But I mean, the thing is, I've had jobs where that were it wasn't a good fit with me. It got very, very bad and I wouldn't sleep. And that is unproductive. So I can see why this question is being asked. I just think that there's a deeper question that we should be thinking about rather than simply these kind of very superficial fixes.
No, I was at Sir Michael Caine's 90th birthday party last night, and we got some pictures from it here. And Emma, who else was there?
I
wasn't there. Why did you all say, were you there?
Well, we actually can imagine that you were. I assumed you were. You are quite pally with him.
It's only because you had to go to bed early for this gig, right?
Probably.
So, there were a number of people there, in particular Tom Cruise. And
Does Tom Cruise live here? He's always...
He's got a place in Hertfordshire, I believe.
Yeah, I think so many of his films are made here. I think that's part of it is. Sir Michael looks well, doesn't he?
He looks very
well. Who I reckon might have been there is Andrew Pearce. He's great friends with Michael Caine.
Denise Welch was there.
Denise Welch was there, and various... I mean, obviously, he's had such a long and varied career that he's probably made a great many friends through the years. I mean, we were talking about Steve Martin in the green room, and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was a fantastic film with Michael Caine and Steve Martin. So you just think, like, from that to Alfie, the Ipcrest, all of the things.
Zulu,
yeah, like one of my dad's favourites.
But not cancelled Zulu, because last week Michael Caine had to come out and say it's ridiculous that Zulu is being cancelled.
That's right. An artificial intelligence chatbot pretended to be a blind person to trick a human computer user into helping it bypass an online security measure. So the robots are taking over the asylum then,
yes.
Freddie. This is in the Mail.
I love this story. The new version of ChatGPT, number 4, it's called, you know those visual things to sort of prove you're not a robot to get past a security test? It asked TaskRabbit, which is a human-based service to help you with things.
Why have they got these
to help
strange
it
names?
to help it get through the security thing. And the human freelancer at TaskRabbit said, "Are you a robot?" And it said, "No, I'm not. I just can't see images." So it pretended to be blind in order to get past the security thing, which is pretty sneaky. And the latest iteration of ChatGPT does seem to be alarmingly intelligent. And this is more stuff about the growth of AI and the success of AI. And we should all be very, very scared.
I agree.
OK, guys, thank you very much indeed. An absolute delight to have you on board. Emma and Freddie will be back next week, I'm sure. Thank you both very much indeed.
Have fun at Cheltenham.
I'll try. I'll do my best. It's 8:48. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
The Chancellor has defended his budget plan amid accusations he's giving away £1 billion in tax to the wealthiest people. Mr Hunt also plans to scrap the £1 million cap for tax-free pension savings, a move Labour says will only help the richest 1%.
The London Stock Exchange has suffered its worst losses since the start of the COVID pandemic as fears of a global banking crisis intensify. Yesterday, the FTSE 100 closed down more than 292 points as worldwide banking stocks went into freefall.
And the Duchess of Sussex will contribute a lemon olive oil cake recipe to a charity cookbook. All proceeds from the World Central Kitchen will support communities impacted by natural disasters and humanitarian crises. We've been talking about the budget all morning, and as the Chancellor announced his plans to boost the economy and help get people back to work.
Well, joining us now to give us his thoughts is the former Brexit Minister and GB News presenter, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to quote you back to yourself. Yesterday you said, current approach to policy making is phantasmagoria. What do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, if you look at the OBR's report, it points out that in the 12 years it's existed, there have been 6 fiscal frameworks that the government has set out. And the OBR then bases its forecasts around the fiscal framework and whether they will be achieved. But the OBR's forecasts are always wrong. So you've got wrong forecasts on a framework that will change. And I don't think that's a good way for policy making. I think what you need, to go back to the last item on cake recipes, is to bake a bigger cake. This was Margaret Thatcher's argument, that you need economic growth to make sure that there is more for everybody rather than dividing up what currently exists.
The Chancellor's calling this a budget for growth, and he believes that it's optimistic and that he is doing exactly that, but you're not convinced?
Well, he's starting from a very difficult point because so much money, £400 billion, was spent on COVID, and therefore the public finances are stretched, and you have to live within your means. I think we need to get spending under control. The problem is the state is spending too much money. It's doing too much for people's lives rather than letting people do things for themselves. And you won't get to a sensible lower tax rate with the ability to grow the economy on the back of that until we look at where we're spending money.
I suppose, with all due respect, Mr Rees-Mogg, we could all say spending's too high, it should be cut. And then you get to the nitty-gritty, which is, what do you cut? Do you have anything in mind where you think, well, we could be doing without that?
Well, you're absolutely right. That is always the hard question. One of the things that Boris Johnson was trying to do was to reduce the civil service by 91,000. That's a pretty good start, because if you reduce the civil service, you reduce the machine that churns out the regulations, and you reduce, therefore, the ability to churn out costs onto businesses. So there are places that you can start, but ultimately you've got to look at the costs we have for welfare and the efficiency of the NHS. I don't think we can cut NHS spending, but we have been seeing increasingly, and Wes Streeting, a Labour shadow minister, has been pointing out that the NHS needs reform.
Should we be cutting other people's welfare before our own? In other words, I'm thinking about the foreign aid budget.
Oh, well, I've always been very sceptical of the foreign aid budget, that I was in favour of its reduction when that was brought through, and I think we should look at our foreign aid more as investment rather than in money that we give away, so that we should expect a long-term return from it, except, of course, for emergencies.
The Chancellor ploughed ahead with his rise in corporation tax, and he's introduced a number of measures to try and mitigate that. I know you described it as salami slicing the rise with capital allowances, and you don't think that that is a good approach. I put that point to John Glen, Chief Secretary to the Treasury this morning. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Well, I'm very aware of Jacob's views. They'll never change, but the reality is that we still have the lowest corporation tax rate in the G7. And with this, what we call full expensing, where basically all investment in new capital and machinery can be set against tax, that will mean a 27 billion tax cut for businesses over the next 3 years. And the question that should be asked of those who think we should maintain the 19%, something that Jacob and others voted for 2 years ago, was what effect did that actually have on investment? And the truth is that it didn't give us the investment that we wanted. And so now we've linked those two together. We still have the most competitive corporation tax in the G7.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I'm not a great fan of the ABR, but if you look at what the ABR says about this investment allowance, it says all it will do is bring forward investment from future years. It won't actually increase the total stock of investment. But philosophically, I don't think this is the right approach. What governments should do is set the lowest tax rates they can, and then allow businesses to make their decisions as to whether they invest or whether they pay dividends or whether they pay more to their staff, rather than saying that we want this tax avoidance scheme, because that's what allowances are. They're a means of perfectly legitimate tax avoidance, and one should always remember avoidance is legitimate, evasion is not. But that if you set simple, low tax rates, businesses decide for themselves. And paying it out to their staff isn't necessarily a bad thing. The staff, in a bonus, may decide, if there's extra money, that they spend that on economic activity, or they invest it. Likewise with dividends. If it goes to the shareholders, they may invest it in businesses that have greater chances of growth. And it's about allowing the free market to operate, rather than thinking that the government knows best what business should do. It doesn't.
It's interesting talking about tax avoidance. I mean, I suppose you could argue then these pensions changes are a form of legal tax avoidance.
Of course they are.
Yeah, and look, you know, welcome, because the Chancellor this morning saying that that's going to save the NHS $3 billion a year that they spend on locums, for example, keeping highly skilled consultants in the sector. So good from that point of view. But then at the same time, you've got Savanta coming out doing a poll yesterday after the budget saying 67% of people think not enough is being done to help with the cost of living from this budget. Is this not sort of tax avoidance for the 1%, as The Guardian have it, and forgetting about the rest of us?
Well, I think sorting out the pension problem for the NHS has been really very important. That I've had my own constituents come to me saying they really want to carry on working in the NHS, but because of the pensions cap, they were getting very large tax bills on not huge earnings. It's just they built up this large pot over 30 or 40 years. So that needed to be done. And once you were doing it for the NHS, it wasn't just the NHS that was affected. But it is a mainly public sector issue with final salary schemes. On the cost of living, actually dealing with the cost of living is primarily the Bank of England and monetary policy, and is regrettably increasing interest rates. I think the Bank of England was asleep at the wheel during Mark Carney's period of office, and that interest rates should have risen gradually from about 2014. The failure to do that has led to both inflation and very sharp increases. Unfortunately, the Bank of England bungled monetary policy and missed its target, and is now having to catch up. The only way that's the government's fault is that the government has agreed to carry on with Bank of England independence. but I think most people feel that is the right risk to be taking.
Just want to finish by asking you about your own show on a Monday night. You're a few weeks into it now. How do you find that, hearing from the general public as to what they think about what you're saying? Does that embolden you?
Oh, yes, and it's every night. It's Monday to Thursday.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock.
I've only been watching on Monday night.
Ah.
How do you
You're
find
missing
time
out.
for every night?
You're missing out. Well, my dinner party plans are slightly interrupted, but I'm not an Islingtonian dinner party man, so that's fine. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What your viewers and my viewers think is where the mainstream of the British electorate are, and we need to keep in contact with that, and politicians reflect it rather than getting into the Islingtonian dinner party set.
Well, we'll all be tuning in again, as always, 8 o'clock this evening. Jacob Rees-Mogg, good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry about that. I genuinely, there's a treat. It's like, you know, when you have a box set and you think, oh, there are more episodes you can watch of this.
There you go, yeah.
So now I know there's 4 extra ones.
I think I once got given a box of 72 Cadbury's cream eggs. So I am the equivalent of 72 Cadbury's cream eggs.
That's amazing. Do you know someone stole a container load of Cadbury cream?
Yes, all my friends said, was it me? And it wasn't.
Is that your favourite?
I love it. Yes, I have a very sweet tooth.
There we go.
Yes.
They have got smaller, though, from when you and I were kids.
Shrinkflation.
And they don't use the dairy milk chocolate anymore either, but they're still pretty good.
Yeah. Right, we've got to go. We're being told we've got to wrap. That's it from us for this hour. We'll have more for you in just a moment. All the latest on the Chancellor's spring budget.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hello, I'm Michael Portillo. You can join me every Sunday on GB News. Remember to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel and to download the GB News app to stay up to date with the latest GB News content. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The Chancellor unveils his £21 billion plan for growth as the country avoids recession.
Hello there, very good to see you just after 9 o'clock on this Thursday, the 16th of March, one day before St. Patrick's Day, because whether you're Irish or not, everybody's Irish tomorrow. This is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel or Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up, the declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Hunt delivered a defiant spring budget, but he's facing criticism from both Labour and some Conservatives over proposals that will see 6 million people paying higher taxes.
Now, all of this amid better than expected forecasts, inflation predicted to plummet to under 3% by the end of the year, and Britain avoiding recession this year.
Credit Suisse announced it will take a $50 billion loan from the Swiss central bank after its share price plummeted. The drop wiped billions from the stock market, prompting the Bank of England to hold emergency talks overnight to assess the risk to the economy.
He's the former apprentice candidate who's out and about on the streets of London for us this morning. He's Tom Skinner, hearing from market traders and small business owners as they react to the budget.
And the Cheltenham Festival's continuing this morning with a more dressed-down look. We'll be meeting the etiquette expert who says you should still make an effort for the races.
I'm not saying those people didn't make an effort. I suppose we're saying the man wasn't wearing a tie and maybe there were a lot of colours about and things.
Denim, leather.
Oh, there was, yes,
whatever next.
You're allowed to wear jeans, yeah, whatever. Does that make racing more inclusive? It's like, you know, they tried that with golf courses as well, that you could walk on some golf courses that you'd be very casually dressed. But I just think there's certain occasions that you've got to dress up for.
I agree, yeah.
OK, back after the sting. Top story this morning, the Chancellor has delivered a spring budget, tax breaks and work incentives forming the core of his plan for growth.
We tackle the two biggest barriers that stop businesses growing: investment incentives and labour supply. The best investment incentives in Europe, the biggest ever employment package, for disabled people more help, for older people barriers removed, for families feeling the pinch, fuel duty frozen, beer duty cut, energy bills capped, and for parents 30 hours of free childcare for all under fives. Today, we build for the future. With inflation down, debt falling and growth up, the declinists are wrong and the optimists are right. We stick to the plan because the plan is working, and I commend this statement to the House.
Well, the Chancellor also revealed that inflation is set to plummet to below 3% by the end of the year, and the UK will avoid recession.
So this morning on this very programme, we heard from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. His name is John Glen. He said the growth in the British economy wasn't as high as he'd have liked, but he was encouraged.
My job is to focus on making the right decisions, supporting the Chancellor and doing the best I can to get the economy in the best shape so that we can grow, get us out of the situation we're in with respect to growth. It's not as high as I would like, but there's lots of encouragement from the OBR in the fact that we are not going to be in a recession this year. Inflation is down. And obviously the interventions we've made are designed to expand the labour market, encourage businesses to invest so that we can grow the economy faster and provide us more choices and hopefully get that tax burden down.
Look, what we're going to do now is spread out to GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey for his take on all of this, the morning after, the day before. Darren, good morning to you.
Yeah, very good morning, Eamonn. As you said, the Labour Party are not terribly pleased, unsurprisingly, with this budget this morning, saying that they would reverse some of the key tenets of it, not least of all that tax break, if you like, for quite wealthy pensioners. The government claim it is aimed at trying to keep NHS doctors in the NHS to stop them from retiring earlier, but it's going to come at a cost of billions of pounds, of tens of thousands of pounds each. And there is also criticism today too in many of the newspapers about the fact that there are going to be no substantial changes to tax, particularly when it comes to the thresholds at which people stop paying tax, meaning that millions of us are going to be dragged into the higher tax brackets in the years to come. It means that the overall tax burden in this country, Eamonn, is going to be at its highest level really since the end of the war, at a time in which wages and living standards are falling at their greatest level since the 1950s. And also criticism too around immigration, which seems one of the key drivers of growth in the years ahead. Expectations that net migration will remain around 250,000 every year at levels that existed before the Brexit referendum. Many, again today, arguing that is not the reason that people voted for Brexit. They wanted to see lower levels of immigration. The government's response to that is that immigration is at least controlled, if it does remain still historically quite high. Overall, though, I think the government will be relatively pleased with the headlines in the papers today. As you say, the UK is expected to avoid a technical recession in the year ahead. Inflation is expected to fall back to much more normal levels. And there is a sense that the government haven't messed this up. Akin to what happened with the mini widgets 6 months ago, though that is, it must be said, a relatively low bar. As always, though, with the budget, it's not the immediate aftermath that matters, it's the hours and days to come. We're expecting to hear from a whole range of think tanks and economic experts later on today. Sometimes budgets can unravel, but the impression so far is that this is more tinkering around the edges rather than anything substantial. And on the whole, the government and the response to it, well, they'll be pretty pleased.
Darren, sort of the only unforeseen thing perhaps could be the reaction of the markets, not directly to this, but whilst the Chancellor was delivering his budget, the market's going completely crazy, and I suppose the days and weeks to come will also impact everything that the Chancellor's trying to do in his budget.
Yeah, real concern about the banking sector yesterday, wasn't there? As you say, not connected at all to the budget. This is much more connected to that US bank that failed in California last week, which has been rescued, at least in the UK, by HSBC. But this all pertains to Credit Suisse, which saw its bank shares drop by a third yesterday. It's the second largest bank in Switzerland. Now, things have somewhat stabilised today. The Swiss government effectively stepped in with a big loan overnight, up to 50 billion quid. So that seems to have stabilised Credit Suisse shares. They're up 20% today. The FTSE, which was down 4% yesterday, is up 1% today. So yes, an element of stability, but there is concern overall about the banking sector, particularly with growing interest rates. It's something the UK government and the Bank of England say they are looking at closely. We know they had talks about Credit Suisse yesterday, but as I say, today seems a lot more stable than it did just 24 hours ago.
Good man, Darren. Thank you very much indeed. Now, looking ahead, 21 minutes from now, the must-view programme To The Point. Let's get to the point with Andrew Pearson. Bev Turner here to tell us all about it. Now, let me guess. Budget?
A bit of budget.
The budget?
A lot of the budget. We've got to see how it's going to affect our viewers and listeners. I think there's an awful lot of cheer in there, but quite interesting. I mean, there's a poll out from Savanta saying 49% of people approve. The Chancellor will take that, Jeremy Hunt.
49%.
Yeah, but that's within hours of him sitting down. People haven't really had a chance to crunch into the detail.
And that's what we're hopefully going to do a little bit more of today. I think particularly the childcare looked like the big hurrah, didn't it, for young parents yesterday. But actually, when you look at the detail of it, it isn't that exciting. And I personally think a lot of mums and dads of young children want a choice. We want to decide whether to go to nursery with our children or to have a childminder maybe, or so let us keep a little bit more of our own money and let us decide where we spend it.
Especially since he said the payments for this will come in stages, you know, so it's all sort of 2 years away from ever being implemented because it might prove to be too popular. Everybody will grab it at once.
Rubbish. September 2025 is when it's due to start. It's only term time as well, remember. So what do working parents do when it's not term time? And also, there are no nursery places available. Most nurseries at the moment have 250 child waiting lists on them already. So it looks great, but I think the devil is in the detail.
Yeah, absolutely. We were speaking to somebody from Pregnant Then Screwed this morning about it. She said at least it moves the dial on the narrative, and they were absolutely blown away and it went much further than they were expecting yesterday by the government.
Also, the big story, of course, is pensions, because you can now put more into pension than you could before, 40 to 60.
You must be rubbing your hands now. You're not limited to a million.
This is going to be difficult for Labour to resist, because this is going to encourage more doctors to stay at work. How can Labour oppose that?
Yeah, but will it? I think if you're making such a big decision about your life choice and whether you go to work or not, it often isn't, particularly now, it isn't motivated by finances. It's about work-life balance. It's about, you know, whether you want to have more leisure time in your 50s and 60s. People are changing, and just financial incentive may not be enough.
But I know you say that, right? But I like the idea of getting on a cruise ship, going around the world, whatever. But I'm more frightened of waking up poor and not being able to pay for my health care, and not being able to change my car, and someone saying, can you go on holiday, and saying, well, I can't afford to go on holiday or whatever. So that sort of frightens me into working.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll be able to keep more of your money in the pension, because it's taxed, it avoids tax.
Yeah.
Which we all want to avoid, because the tax burden is the highest since the Second World War under a Tory government.
We can get you a cruise for free, I'm sure, Eamonn. I'm sure you could go and be an ambassador for cruises. They'd love you.
Can't find anybody to go with me. It's very lonely.
I'll come with you on a cruise. I can't think of anything nicer.
Lovely Ruth would love to go on a cruise with you.
No, there's where you're wrong. You say, no, she doesn't do cruises. Right. She doesn't do boats. Right. She gets motion sickness.
That's no good.
Oh, that doesn't help.
Isabel?
Oh, I've got plenty of time with Eamonn as it is.
Yeah, that's very diplomatic.
Do you want to be locked in a cabin with her?
Yeah.
Well, listen, you two are going to be locked in a cabin together for the next few hours, and we look forward to it at 9:30. Thank you so much.
12 minutes past 9. A very good morning to you. Nice to have you on board. We're going to bring you up to date now with what else has been happening news-wise.
Commuters face another round of rail strikes today as members of the RMT union. 14 operators walk out once again over pay and conditions. Passengers are being warned to expect disruption, with the services that are running starting later and finishing much earlier than usual.
Ministers and health service unions close to a breakthrough, we hear, in talks to resolve an ongoing dispute over pay. The Guardian's reporting this. The newspaper says the announcement could come as early as today. The government says the discussions have been constructive and that talks are still ongoing.
The UK is falling down the global ranks when it comes to life expectancy. According to the research published in the Royal Society for Medicine, the country has fallen from 7th globally 70 years ago to 29th.
We're talking about fashion. You think going to the races is just about, dressing for the weather or, what the form of the horses is or whatever. But no, there's more to it than that,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
But the rules have changed. It's becoming more casual. And we'll be discussing whether or not that's a good thing next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to a market now, because here we are the morning after the budget, and we've got the former Apprentice star, and he's also an entrepreneur, Tom Skinner. Tom's been on the streets of London this morning. There he is, holding his ear there, asking people their reactions to the announcement, and he's collared someone there. Who have you got, Tom? Good morning.
Eamonn, how are you, mate? How you doing? Right, so I found this man here, Dimitri, and we had a little chat. Lovely fella, right? And he's found one good thing about the budget. Draft beer's now 11p cheaper. What does that mean for you, mate?
Well, cost of living's going up. It's nice that the price of the pint's going down.
That's it. And you have a beer later on the day?
Of course.
Good,
down the Alice.
Down the Alice, yeah. What time are you getting down there?
5:36.
Right, well, I'll be down there at 5:36 for a pint of beer with him. And listen, you been following anything else with the budget at all?
To be honest, not really, no.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I've got to turn up. I'm doing my job, brother. I ain't got the mic right. I can't even hear anything anymore. It's all gone quiet over there. So not really. Price of beer's cheaper. You happy with that? And what do you do with work, mate?
I work in insurance.
How's it going?
It's going good. 4th month.
Yeah.
4th month, yeah.
Good, my brother. Well, listen, have a great day. I'm going to go ask some more people some questions. Go and smash it. Be lucky. A bus. Go on, brother. Let's go and find someone else, eh? I was at Cheltenham yesterday. It was nice and warm. Now we're freezing cold at Liverpool Street Station. Right, mate, what's happening? This is my mate Cole the cabbie. So Cole, the budget come out yesterday, bruv, yeah? What does that mean for you?
Well, they've froze the fuel duty.
Yeah.
But it's still quite high as it is, you know what I mean? Like, this cab here, like, they want you to run it on electric, but it's so expensive to run it on electric now.
Yeah.
You're better off running it on petrol. But the only good thing about the budget, I think, is the price of beer's gone down, ain't it?
That's it. So everyone seems to think that beers are cheap, but that's better, do you know what I mean? But everything else, I don't know what to say. It is freezing down. Eamonn, how are you, by the way, mate? You okay?
I'm very well. I'm not dressed as well as you. Like the LV you've got on you there.
Thank you, mate. I had a deal on that. It's from the market. Don't tell anyone. I don't know where we're going now, guys.
Will you see if you can grab some people? You were talking about being at Cheltenham yesterday. I saw Jack Whitehall calling you his hero.
Yeah, do you know what? What a great day! I was at Cheltenham, my first ever time. Went there and went there on Monday. Tuesday. Was there all day yesterday. Ended up on ITV. I don't know how that happened. Met Jack Whitehall, met Jeff Stelling. Just had a blinding day, and hopefully meet you too soon as well, Eamonn.
Okay, good man. Well, look, we'll leave you there to mingle and mix there. But great having you on the show. Hope you come back again sometime.
Love that. Thank you very much. You have a great day, yeah?
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Skinner there, live from Petticoat Lane Market, where he was. Now, we were talking about Cheltenham. We're going to continue to talk about Cheltenham because some racegoers attending the festival have decided to do away with their usual type of formal clothes they would wear because the dress code etiquette has been reduced.
I don't reckon Tom Skinner would have done that. I reckon he would have been a snappy dressy yesterday with a bit of bosh.
Well, he may have been casual, but he would have had a label. It would have been a label.
It would have been flashy.
Wouldn't
Love it.
Let's see what you can wear. Can you wear trainers, tracksuits, hoodies, quilted jackets, whatever it happens to be?
Yes. Apparently some traditionalists aren't very happy about it. This comes after the organisers scrapped dress codes for all its racecourses. So if we lost the essence of British racing tradition.
Diana Mathers. Let's talk to Diana now and see what she has to say. Diana, lovely to see you. Are you going today? Because...
Eamonn.
Yeah, well, you look as if you're well. You're not going. No.
I'm not going, but this is what I would be wearing. This sort of nice, quite furry, quite blingy, but very suitable sort of scarf type thing to keep me warm. Because that's the main thing about Cheltenham. It can be very, very cold. If I was going to wear a hat, I would not wear a fascinator. Definitely not. I might wear something... like this, if it was very cold. Not with this, of course, it doesn't quite go. But the main thing is to dress appropriately. And I think that the races are such great days. And it is such a shame if we just treat it like any other by not bothering to dress up. I mean, looking at that picture there, that's great. But for the jump, for the over the jumps races, you tend to dress down. You don't dress as you do for Royal Ascot, except at Aintree. They do tend to dress up at Aintree, but it can be so cold. Warmth and comfort first, fashion next, but respect.
Diana, what about this? The jeans and the leather. I mean, it's okay, as you say. It's a race. It's the national hunt. It's more casual than the Royal Ascot and the like.
Yes.
But jeans and leather. It's just not cricket.
No, it isn't.
No, it's horse
racing. Certainly not racing. Absolutely, definitely not. No, I think it's a shame. I think these traditions have been with us a long time. Why change them? It was working. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well,
it makes people think. Sorry.
I think the reason they're changing it is that they want to make it more accessible to everyday people. You know, the ladies that we had a picture of there, it was Ladies' Day yesterday, but I wouldn't even know where you get those outfits from. That doesn't come cheap. It's incredibly expensive to wear all the finery. It's expensive to get the tickets. And I suppose it's good if they're opening up what's a really great day out to ordinary people as well.
Yes, but in fact, if you're spending that much on your outfit, why not spending on something that's quite fun but is appropriate and looks more in line with horse racing? That's an outfit you could wear anywhere. Whereas if you're going to the races, and Ascot, of course, is very different from Cheltenham as far as dress code is concerned, and the invitations this year say dress code apply, especially for the Royal Box, the Royal Enclosure. So I think that, some standards should be kept, and I will certainly be keeping mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think it's hard dressing for Cheltenham. Think if you're a man. Think of how much harder it is for men to choose the right footwear and everything involved. But
well,
anyway,
footwear.
Yes, footwear is very important, particularly for ladies.
So easy. Comfy flat shoes.
Are
you wired up to my wife? Because she says all the things she says to me again. It's exactly the same.
Poor Ruth.
If only I was a man. If only I was a man. You've got nothing to worry about.
I'm going to be on my feet for hours.
You just have a nice coat and a nice scarf, a hat if you want one, and sensible shoes that aren't going to get muddy and get wet, if it is wet. So it is easier being a man, definitely. Especially those men.
OK, Diana, thank you. Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for laying out your rules, the way you think that it should be. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Where Diana is absolutely right is that the weather is often inclement.
Wind, yeah, it's cold and windy, but it's a great day out, and I'm going there in a minute. So I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye from me, goodbye from Eamonn. We'll be back bright and early on Monday. Stephen and Ellie are in from 6 tomorrow.
They will be right now. It is Andrew and Beverly, and they are, as always, to the point.
Thank you, guys. I am so jealous you're going to Cheltenham. I can't think of anything nicer to do today. How lovely. But we have a lot to get through this morning. We're going to be reflecting on the budget in a little bit more detail, aren't we?
How it affects you, the big changes in pension, big changes in childcare. Is that going to make your life a big difference? And the government are hoping it's going to get a lot more people back into work, particularly people in their 50s and mums and mums.
I'm not sure it's going to work. I've got an opinion on this childcare issue, which I will share with you after 9:30. We've got an interesting story about game hunting, which is up for debate today, isn't it?
Comments.
And we want to know what you think, as always, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Get in touch with us throughout the show.
And we've got top guest today, David Davis, former leadership contender, one of the leading figures on the Tory backbenches. He'll have a very interesting take on that budget, I'm sure.
We've got
As will we.
Sam Lister from The Express, and we've got Carol Malone. Don't go anywhere. First of all, here's your news with Bethany.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you